Meeting to order. Thank you all for coming tonight for our June 7th, 2021 Fairfield Planning Board meeting. First order of business is review of meeting minutes from April 26, 21. If you've had a chance to review that, I'd take a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor to approve those meeting minutes? Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to the public hearing. A conditional land use application for Fairfield Solar LLC to construct a 20-megawatt solar farm located at 29 Oakland Road, assesses map 2, lot 38, and map 24, lot 1, in the rural residential land use district. We'll first let Fairfield Solar explain their application and go over the details in this public hearing, and then we'll take comments and questions from the public at that time. So Fairfield Solar, if you want to go ahead. I take it we're zooming.
Bruce, are you on the line?
Might be muted.
We'll give them just a minute, I guess, to get hooked up.
Hi, this is Caitlin Nickerson. I'm a consultant with the project. I will reach out and make sure they're online. Right here.
Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Oh, that's Caitlin. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Oops.
Okay, this is Fairfield
They're up
Solar.
on council chambers. Can you go to that one?
Good evening.
Oh, I can
gentlemen.
see. There you go.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay, you are Fairfield Solar LLC?
Yes.
Okay, if you would, we are in public hearing at this point. If you would, explain your project to the public, details, whatever you can tell us about the project, and then we're going to open it up for questions and comments after you do your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Bruce Metrick, Project Development Manager for Chinbro. I'm a resident of Waldboro, Maine, and I've been with Chinbro 15 years. Chinbro is the developer and owner of the project, and as I'm sure most of you know, we're an employee-owned company principled in Pittsfield, Maine, with about 4,000 employees. With me, I have our team. I won't go all through the titles that are available for questions: Parker Hadlock, Rick Leonard, Lauren Blowen, Corey Barrell, Caitlin Nickerson, and Ted Gifford are here. We provided copies of the permit application and all the attachments requested to Nicole, and we thank you very much for hearing us tonight and for being here. To jump right into it, and I'm reading off, just to summarize the project, off the land use permit application. So Fairfield Solar LLC will be developed and owned by Chinbro Corporation. The physical address is, and pardon me for looking down here to read this, 29 Oakland Road in Fairfield. The project scope, the project size itself will be just under 80 acres that will be inside the fence, and with the solar panels and the inverters and all the wiring that goes with it. It'll be just over 69,000 panels under the current design. Estimated project cost is between $35 and $40 million. So that's a very brief overview of the scope of the project. And I will just keep going unless you have any questions, and or we can come back to them, if you will. We did file a separate letter for Nicole's guidance to the fire marshal. We sent that letter and received back a response that we will meet the fire chief's needs as he's outlined in that letter. We've also, under a separate cover to the planning board, we've asked for consideration. I'm sorry?
Just feedback.
Feedback. We've asked for, in a separate letter to the planning board, we've asked for a waiver of the requirement to start construction within 6 months of the hopeful approval of the planning board conditional use permit. The reason for that is this project will tie into the CMP transmission grid governed by ISO New England. So the actual approver of this from an electrical standpoint will be ISO New England, which governs the 6 New England states. That process takes well over a year, year and a half, and we're about 6 months into it at this point. So it won't be handled at the local level, and therefore, we figure we would start construction, assuming we get conditional approval from the planning board, sometime within the 12 to 18 month period. But we realized, we were told we should ask for this in 6 months blocks. Before I turn it over to some of our experts to talk about our environmental experts to talk about the siting and what we've done for the requirements, we'll go through that briefly and then into as much detail as you want. I'd like to mention that, pardon me, we have had some amount of outreach and contact with local folks and neighbors. Specifically, Chris Tupper, the owner of the property, he had reached out to us as he was aware of the facility's solar attributes, and that Chinbro had done some solar development, specifically a 10 megawatt project here in Pittsfield on land that we own that's been running for 5 years. And we also have 2 projects under construction, one in Herman and one here in Pittsfield on additional land that Chinbro owns. The one in Herman, a gentleman up there heard about our Pittsfield project, contacted us and said he would like to have his land developed by solar, right off Route 2 next to the old movie theater, drive-in movie theater. So Chris contacted us and we reached terms and purchased a land, 180 acres from him, or I'm sorry, 155 acres. Shortly after that, in fall of 2020, Mr. and Mrs. Heim introduced themselves to us, and they have water rights coming from that property over to their property across the road. And we discussed some options for that, and we offered to drill them a well on their property, and that has not yet been executed. We're waiting to hear from them on that. So that was back in fall of 2020. In the winter of 2020, the Snowmobile and ATV Club, local to your area, introduced themselves. We've met with them and provided what we think we and the clubs believe to be a good trail plan on where it won't interfere with the solar panels and where it can match up with their existing route and expand their existing route. The latest one was Friday of last Friday, the Ross family introduced themselves to us and mentioned that they were looking to swap some land that they have for land that has frontage on, fronts the road there, Oakland Road. We talked about that on Friday, and I did research over the weekend on what the contents, what their proposal for a swap would be, and we conferred with the team this morning, and we advised Mr. Ross that it just won't work. The amount of property that they want to swap in exchange for what they want off the solar farm it just doesn't work technically. And but we did offer another suggestion, which I won't go into now in detail, but to perhaps give them the opportunity to acquire some land at the back of the property on the west side, because we don't intend to put solar panels back there. So I just mentioned that on trying to be the good neighbor policy, reach out to people, help where we can, and also the beginning of how we got to be in solar project up there in Fairfield. And again, it was through Chris Tucker approaching us. Any questions on that so far from the planning board?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, who'll go through some of the high-level attributes of the environmental permitting that we've done to date to get to where we are, and the due diligence, and then also the status of our permits, both federal and state.
Hello, everybody. I would like to request, if we can, do we have the ability to share the screen to be able to show folks the location and the array? And
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry, could Lauren speak up a little? We're having difficulty hearing her.
So when we try to share the screen, it says it's disabled by the host.
Give me just a moment.
And while he's doing that, Lauren, you want to try saying, see if people can hear you?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. Can everybody hear me? Hear me now?
Yes.
A little bit better?
Yes, better.
Great.
So I'm Chimbro's corporate environmental manager. I've been with Chimbro about 10 years now, and prior to that, I did work for Maine DEP. This particular solar farm is the third one, as Bruce did mention, that we've been permitting work on over the last couple of years. It is the second one that will be a site location of Development Act size permit, which is anything over 20 acres of developed area. So some of the smaller 5 megawatt solar farms do not trigger that site location of Development Act permitting process with Maine DEP. SLOTA for short, for the acronym. You might hear myself or Caitlin Nickerson with Flycatcher use that acronym. So the SLOTA process does cover stormwater management, which will be the stormwater flow off of the site. We have cited this and cited the panels and the access roads to limit the amount of grading that will need to be done, which will then limit the amount of stormwater management. Essentially, at the end of the job, the project will be a meadow. There will be some clearing as located in the west parcel in that wooded portion. But there will be very limited grading, so therefore the water flow off the property into the wetland areas will remain pretty much the same as it is now. The upper portion, which is the very blue wetland area towards the furthest west, there you go, that's going to remain undeveloped at this point in time, so that whole wetland area will remain as it is. There will be no additional clearing beyond that westernmost stream area, and we'll be protecting that stream as much as possible during construction activities. On the other side, the east parcel, we will be developing the existing field area. There are some minor wetland areas in there, and Caitlin can talk a little bit more about those. But again, limited grading in that location, just enough to get the panels situated appropriately for their operation. The buffering for neighboring properties, you can see that to the north and the south, there's a pretty good existing tree line. So we don't intend to change that much, except for a little bit of limited shading clearing and then management of that shading area over time. Entrances to and from the highway, there's going to be two. One right there, which is going to be just below the existing driveway to the farm. And then there's, on the other side, it will be somewhat offset from the existing driveway that's there now and out to the back. There is a stream crossing right about there where Corey's at with the cursor at the moment. It's an existing culverted crossing. We are just going to improve the surface of that.
Zoom in.
You can zoom in, yeah, thanks, Corey. Oh, maybe not. So the stream crossing is just going to be surface improved for construction traffic. That would be basically just to get the panels and the material out there. We did look at it. It seems to be in good shape, and there won't be any impacts from construction use of that crossing at this point in time. So, erosion sediment control, we do not at this point in time have our DEP permit applications fully complete, but we're very familiar with the main standards and the main requirements as well as Army Corps' requirements. And we will be implementing all of the proper BMPs during construction to assure that the streams remain clean. The wetland areas during construction, we're going to have limited impact. There will be clearing impact, obviously, to the wetlands that are wooded and forested. The impact, permanent impact, would just be the posts themselves. So the entire site is essentially going to be a meadow and wetland meadow types upon completion of construction. Which that means during construction we will still have to protect them. We can't tramp all through them, so they'll be well protected. I think that about covers it for a general overview. Our construction plans right now in terms of the environmental permits, we do plan to submit the permits middle to end of July. So you folks will have those application packets for Maine DEP, which is the Site Location Development Act and Natural Resource Protection Act, and the Army Corps permits, which pretty much mirror the Natural Resource Protection Act permits. Those will be in mid to late July. Right now, I think I'll turn it over to Caitlin Nickerson to talk a little bit about the wetland types and some of the permit milestones that we've completed thus far and where we're at for that.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. I'm Caitlin Nickerson. I'm a wetland scientist from Flycatcher. We're a small environmental consulting firm. We have natural resource scientists, wildlife biologists, GIS specialists, and we have been working on the environmental due diligence for the project. So we started field work last fall. So prior to field work, we do all of the agency outreach and database searches, looking for any listed species, protected habitats, natural resources that are known to occur on the site or within the vicinity of the site. Use that to inform our surveys. So we did our wetland delineation last fall, and also sort of a habitat analysis of the site. And then we used that data to do a vernal pool survey that we completed in the appropriate time of year during the spring, which happened to be a very short window, actually. We had that early spring. And so what you see on this figure are the results of our surveys. The blue areas, the blue shaded areas are the wetlands. We have 2 streams that go through the site, an intermittent stream on the west parcel and a perennial stream, I think it's named Fish Brook, on the east parcel, and a number of forested and field wetlands. So as Lauren was talking about, the wetlands that occur in the field, there's no clearing impacts proposed. Really, there will be timber mats used or limited batting to get out to these areas to install the racking. And as part of the Army Corps permit, we have incentive to use under 15,000 square feet of timber mats throughout the project. So I'm assuming we'll do something of that nature for the construction of, within the wetlands. The results of the vernal pool survey, it's kind of hard to see on this figure, but there's one unnatural vernal pool. It's basically a skidder rut with a few egg masses in it. So we really didn't find a lot of amphibian breeding in the site. And then another requirement from it's not a requirement, but it's strongly suggested from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, is to put a 100-foot buffer around the intermittent and perennial streams. And the current design shows that we have that setback. And that's sort of it. There will be one more survey that we have to complete this summer, a small world begonia survey. It's something, it's a rare plant that shows up when we do our database searches on the federal side. So we will be completing that survey this summer, and the results of that survey will go into the site law permit, the NRPA permit, and the Army Corps permit. Did I miss anything, Lauren?
I think that's it. Do we have any questions on the permitting status for the project?
Did we have questions for the permitting status?
Yes, regarding the natural resource surveys or the environmental status of the project.
Not at this time, but we are in public hearing, so I would open it up for questions or comments from the public, since we're still in the public hearing section. Any questions or comments from the public? Jeff?
Hi, my name is Jeff Pellerin. I'm the northern abutter, and I don't know anything about this. Just heard about it. Congratulations. I came here today with thoughts of 2 or 3 paragraphs of telling you how sad we are for all the hard work and the love of the land that we took so much pride in taking care of. However, I'm not going to burden you with the broken hearts. I'm not going to go through all this. It's going to be what my concerns are, what my business is. I want to know from the council what my maximum setback is on the northern line. Right now, they're giving me 35 feet. It was 20. Now it's 35. The reason why I ask is because this is almost a mile-long fence. And I don't know where they're going to put the fence. It looks like it's on their side, on the inside of the rock wall. But I have trees that are 60, 80, and 120 feet tall. And I want to know if I'm going to be responsible if these trees fall on their panels, because I'm not going to be able to keep up with that.
Okay, good questions and good comments, but let's do them one at a time so that they could respond to that. I think your
All right,
first question
sorry.
was,
Okay, what is my maximum setback?
okay, the question is what the maximum setbacks are, side and rear. Nicole?
So fences can be put right on property lines in our ordinance. We don't have setback fences.
For fences.
Right, and then for the solar energy system itself, it must be at 35 feet, no closer than 35 feet.
But what
per-
is my maximum allowable setback? I believe it's 50.
Okay, so I don't
Well-
quite understand the question.
What can I get for my maximum? You're saying that's what they're saying for solar, but
Right.
in our state, I want to know, what is the maximum setback?
In our land use ordinance for your
That's-
district,
yes.
your side setback is 20 feet. That is the required
Well, that's,
setback.
then it must be different than Waterville.
Right, they are, right. Every land use district is. you are
Because they have
correct, is different.
75 feet from a house, and they have 50 feet from anything commercial.
Every land use district, even within the town of Fairfield.
So that's the big
is
question for
different.
tonight, because, okay, the other thing is, when they put the fence, is the fence going to be on the rock wall? Because there's a rock wall all the way up. I mean, and the trees, are they going to cut the trees on the line?
Okay, if we could we can answer all your questions, and we'll stay to answer everybody's
All right.
questions, but we really kind of got to do like one at a time, so it's very clear what your question is, and also for you, what the answer is.
Right.
So back to setbacks.
I'll be checking the setbacks. I'll be
Oh,
double checking.
Oh, absolutely. Check within the ordinance, so the ask and the answer, I think, was 10-foot side setbacks, and I think they're showing on their plan, is it 35-foot setbacks to the panels, is that correct? Fairfield Solar?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it says.
So, in the question asked but not answered, because of the stone wall along the line, obviously you're going to put the chain link fence just inside the stone wall?
Yes, that's the intention.
That's the intention, okay. And
Okay.
And Jeff, that stone wall, is it 2 feet wide or 10 feet
It's
wide?
3 feet wide.
3 feet wide. So the question was, and I think the answer is yes, they'll leave the stone walls and chain link fence, with some space in front of the stone walls.
Okay, so it's not a stone wall all the way back, but it's a stone wall about halfway up. So the trees that are beyond the stone wall, are you going to cut every tree on the line?
Okay. So your question is, just so they understand, are they going to cut every tree on the line for
After the
the
stone wall.
after the stone wall? And I don't believe they have the authority to cut line trees.
Okay.
So the question to Fairfield Solar is, what is your intention on trees close to the line on your side of the project?
Who's on that side? Do you want to answer the question? I think that's directed to us.
It is, yeah.
That's to Fairfield Solar.
Go ahead, Corey.
Yep, so we have our road design is set back. Now, you might have to check on the plans because I haven't looked at them recently enough to remember, but I believe our road is actually 20 feet from the property line, where we can put that fence closer to the roadway and further away from the property line to allow those trees to be left. We certainly want to leave those trees as a buffer so that we won't have a visual scenic spot where you can see the panels. We'd like to leave a buffer so that you can't see them from the road on that north boundary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and I like that.
Just one second. On the map, it's saying that there is a 20-foot side setback from property line, and the arrow shows to the edge of their road. So I'm envisioning there's
40
20 feet to the edge of the road, and then there's their road, which is probably 15 or 20 feet.
20 feet wide road.
20 feet wide,
Yeah.
and then their panels,
Yes.
okay?
However-
Does that answer that?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay,
However, I was concerned about that fence, whether it shows it just inside the line, but I was concerned that if they put it right on the line, how they would maintain it because it's so close to the line, they really can't be on the rock wall to maintain it. And I'm also, well, answer that question. I think they can do it. If they move it in like they said, I think that's good. But, of course, I think that the fence, the good fence is on my side. You know what I mean? In other words, the posts are on the inside. Is that correct?
the question is, on the fence, are the posts on your development side of the line, or your posts on the outside of the fence line?
So that's right. The post would be on the solar farm side.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Next question?
So it gives a nice clean mesh. And so just going back, thank you, I appreciate you slowing me down there, but I only have a few other questions. But so we're going to double check the maximum setback, and I'm going to do some digging myself because I want to get to the bottom of it.
Now, question, when you keep saying maximum setback, is your question really,
I just
What-
want to double check it.
right, but is your question, what is the maximum that this board would accept for a setback?
Well, that would be,
Is that your question?
that could be my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Because you
you
keep
for
saying maximum setback.
Yes.
And,
Because I think, Kevin, that's kind of what happens in some of these meetings. If you feel that we need more of a setback, then maybe you can allow that.
okay.
Okay, so, thank you.
Okay, well, the planning board does have discretion, especially near buildings, sight lines, for setbacks.
Thank you.
And obviously, the ordinance is a minimum, 10 feet, and we like to see developers like this do 4 times the minimum to leave wooded buffer zones, which I think is what their intention is. And we didn't fully answer one of your last questions, which was to Fairfield Solar, where the stone wall ends, and assume that the fence line is a couple feet from the stone wall. Is it your intention to continue running the chain link fence parallel with the property line or set back to the property line?
Straight line.
Yes.
Yes. So our fence would be continuous to totally enclose the solar panels, but yes, they would continue even in the gaps in the rock wall in a straight line all the way. Well, it would be paralleling the property line.
Okay, so if the 3-foot stone wall is 18 inches and accurately to center, and you're a couple feet off the stone wall, you would parallel your fence, in this case, 2, 3 feet, 4 feet, parallel with the property line as you continue going to the back where the stone wall ends. Is that your answer?
Yes, although I think we would actually be further from the property line to avoid any conflicts with trees or rocks. I think I think you'll find between the property line and the road, we have 20 feet. I think we'll probably be closer towards the middle of that 20 feet. I think we'd be essentially 10 feet off the property line, but I'd have to look on the design again. But we could change that in the final plan.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, and there is some confusion, just so you know, on your plans. I'm on Plan C1, and you do identify vegetated buffer evergreen tree plantings at 8 feet on center. You show that witness line going to the line with the X's on it, but then you further identify that on your legend as the fence line. So there is confusion where the added buffer zone is on the front and/or how far it goes back from the sides. And again, on your legend, you're saying that that is the fence line. So there is confusion, which is wooded buffer zones and which is fence line. Next question, Jeff.
Okay, so I believe the question, if the trees are cut on the line, I think I own every other tree, but we're not cutting trees on the line.
Let me ask that question. It's my assumption that you cannot cut line trees unless you negotiate with a neighbor. So the question to Fairfield Solar, is it your intention to cut trees that are in fact line trees beyond the stone wall?
No.
No, it's not.
No, is the answer.
Okay. So if my trees, which there are going to be about 10,000 of them, if my trees are 60, 80, and 120 feet tall, and most of them fall from north to south, am I liable for my trees falling on your fence or panels?
Okay, did you hear the question? Fairfield Solar?
I think that question we'd have to ask the insurance company or a real estate lawyer familiar with Maine state law. Again, that would be an insurance issue, either by either property owner. I don't have the answer to that right now.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Is it, on some other projects that we have had larger, taller trees on the neighboring property, we have worked with that landowner to cut those trees if we all feel like they're a risk to the farm and it's agreeable to the landowner. So that is something that we have done in the past. I'm not quite sure why you're asking the question, but that's an option that we've worked through.
I think the question is being asked for an extended liability issue from the landowner that a tree 2 feet on his property, and let's assume it's a hazard tree or it's leaning close to the line, if those, we're doing one in Winslow, and the hazard trees are being targeted and removed with cooperation from the abutting landowners to remove the obvious hazards that are shown. So that question of liability could be further identified, or if you did talk to the abutters about hazard trees or large trees that are leaning over your solar panel, it doesn't make sense to me to leave those trees and create a liability later. So that may be something that you want to negotiate and/or further define for the abutters.
I just remembered something from the insurance side that I've dealt with in the past, and that's that my experience has been that, let's say, put the hazard trees aside, but a good tree gets hit by lightning, it falls down, it falls from the abutter onto an adjacent property, then at least what I'm familiar with is that the adjacent property owner then has the right to cut that tree up, get it off of there, and then file a claim with their insurance company and not the abutters.
I didn't quite understand that. Would you repeat?
The way I've seen the law, the way I've seen that play out is that if a tree were to fall across a property from the abutter, in this case, say onto the Fairfield solar land, then we would have the right to cut that tree up to get it, to remove it. And then it becomes an insurance issue. We would file a claim with the insurance company due to the damage from things that fell on. That's been my experience with it. But again, you're right, you should clear out the hazard trees first.
So at the end of the day, for Mr. Pellerin, it's our
Okay.
responsibility, if it falls onto our land, But we really want to work with good neighbors and will be a good neighbor that during the clearing operation, if we identify hazard trees, we'll mutually agree to, let's go get that and remove that risk for both of us.
Okay, do you hear that, Jeff?
Yes, I heard that, but it doesn't clarify if it's their insurance company they're filing a claim with or my insurance company.
Theirs, from what I
Theirs.
understood.
Is their insurance company going to sue me?
Okay, just a second. The question is, would you clarify which, if this lightning tree strikes down and damages $5,000 worth of panels, is it your intention that you would clean up the tree, I got that, fix your panels, would you then go after the abutter's insurance company for damages?
I can't answer that. It depends on the insurance policy we take out, and we haven't done that yet.
But the brief answer is, though, we only talk to our own insurance company.
Right,
What that insurance company does is out of our hands.
right.
But I do believe if we apply the common sense, if we all have done the good neighborly thing, to get rid of hazard trees, I believe that we'll all be handled well.
Every homeowner in a, developed area where you have mature trees faces the same issue. They probably get spaced 100 times a year in Maine.
Yeah. Well, they don't have 10,000 trees on their line.
Well, okay. The issue of discussion right now from the public is the liability of their trees on some very expensive panels. That's the issue, and I'll warn our board that any of these issues that seem to become, a real issue of concern, we have the right to table this for further discussion if the questions aren't answered to the satisfaction of the abutting properties. And the fact remains that Jeff's concerns are valid to the fact that he's got a tree farm there, and if a tree fell in that field tomorrow, he'd call his buddy neighbor and they'd go cut the tree up into firewood. Because of the value of these panels coming to this neighborhood, he should not have to take on bigger insurance policies to cover the damage. You have $30 million worth of panels sitting out there that you brought to this project, and it should not affect the insurance capability of the abutters because of what you're doing. So we want to think hard and fast about that. Jeff, what other questions may you have?
Okay, so
Can I respond? What we'll do
yes.
is we will check on that with the insurance company and find out exactly what the process is and then get back to you.
Absolutely. If we could have some feedback to know your position to protect these abutting landowners from an extreme liability situation that doesn't happen today, but when the panels show up, it does. It would make better sense if you identified what that insurance policy was and who was really liable, to what extents, and also consider working with the landowner to absolutely get the hazard trees out of there, because that would be flagrant if you left trees leaning over solar panels.
And if I could add a detail to that, perhaps, Bruce, if other things tonight are found acceptable, that would be a condition of the acceptance, right?
Yep.
We would provide that answer.
Yep.
Thank you. Jeff, next question.
okay, I recognize the buffer on the front of the road half. However, about 300 yards up on the northern line, on the top of the hill, there is a large open section dividing the two fields, and it's probably about 200 feet long, and this is due to the cows. For many years, we shared our land with our neighbors for their safe grazing. So the buffer, the hedges that we have on our farm now are nice big hedges, but however, there's no hedge there. It's just wide open, and it is a very panoramic view for us. So I'm requesting some buffers, some trees like you have along the side of the road.
And this is 300 yards from Route 23 on the north line?
Yes.
300 yards?
I'm guessing, I'm going by football fields, but,
Okay. Question to Fairfield Solar. Are you familiar with what he's talking about, this open pasture area? Okay.
Yes.
And has there been anything specified or designed for that at this time?
So what we typically do with areas such as that is we will work with the landowner for a buffer screening for areas like that are kind of intermittent, maybe maybe the buffer plantings that we're proposing for along the roadside aren't exactly what would work for that area, but we will put some form of screening in there.
Okay. So there will be a screening review, Jeff, to identify this area for your views.
All right, thank you. Then I have one other one, well, two more, and that's it. So I was wondering if Chimbro would be kind enough that they could remove the cupola from the old big barn and preserve it for the family and the community. It's a nice big,
Absolutely.
it's got a nice big giant weather vane on it, and it's like 6 by 6.
Okay.
It's a beautiful
And
piece
this
of
is
art.
on the old farm that's getting torn down?
Yes.
Okay. And
It's on the bar, yes, we'll preserve that and turn it over to the town.
Jeff, who do you want it turned over to?
Well, I would think the family, and I don't know who in the family, but where it would be put in the family, or if it would be designated somehow on the land, like they did, for St. Francis Church. I mean, we cried and cried to see the church torn down, and then they put the bell out front,
Right.
It was like,
Right.
okay, we're okay with it.
Yeah,
If we could have just a little dialogue around that, I like where you're headed. That would be a nice feature near the entrance of the facility, if that worked for the family. As I think about problematic outcomes, if we give it to one family member, what about the other family members? So you could help us navigate that, Jeff.
Well, they're here tonight, so,
All right.
Okay.
So bottom line is, I think your question was, would we be willing to take that cupola off the barn and preserve it, and deliver it to some safekeeping? And I just leave it to yourself and/or the planning board to determine what safekeeping means. Help us, don't make us make that decision. But if you wanted it as part of the solar farm, as a little legacy to the Tupper farm, we'd certainly, I like the idea. I'll just tell you flat out, I like the idea.
okay. So I'm glad you heard me on that. Thank you. One last question. This is probably going to be talked about for a long time, but we will try to get out of here tonight. But the deer habitat on this land is huge. From the month of December to the mid to end of March, over 100 deer winter on this property because of the cedar bog. So now they're not going to know what to do. They're going to, I have 4, 5, and 6 deer who get hit on my farm every year. But now there's going to be over a mile-long fence creating a dam, you might say. They will only have 2 choices. It's 50%, go right or left, because they never go back. So we're going to need some blinking lights and some serious deer crossing signs.
Okay. The question raised is, again, deer habitat. Isn't that covered through the DEP process? And can you speak to that issue for the deer wildlife habitat? And that's addressed in our ordinance as well. So what's the answer to that deer issue?
sure, it will be covered by the Natural Resource and the Site Location Development Act permit through the DEP process. The far west portion of the site will remain forested above that stream. So, the hopes there is that the deer will have habitat in that area as well as the neighboring properties to the north, or to the west rather. So that, more to come on that, and it'll be within the site location application packet.
Jeff, did you get that?
Yes, I did. So,
But we'd also welcome Jeff's input, right? You've been there, you've been watching it.
Count 'em every year.
What's smart.
count them every year. I think there was 150 this year. And we do have the ticks to go with them, but we'll survive, we try to survive. I get it.
Yeah, there will be, there'll be a fence across the back portion, so if there's something that we can work with you for suggestions on further allowing them a safe travel route.
Well,
And the entire backside will be unfenced. Right? We're just
Right.
wrapping around the panels
Right, just
themselves.
around the panel themselves.
So they'll still have free access to go around that
That
west
western section.
end of the property.
yes, they will, but if they come down to 23, their only option is across the road, and then they'll head to the flat, and then they're gonna hit another fence. So they'll have to cross down by Fish Brook. And that is naturally how they do it. However, they have more rain, you know, that now it's going to cause a funnel. And I believe there's going to be, you know, when you're talking 100 deer, you're talking a herd. I saw one guy, he hit 5 of them all at once.
Okay, concern again about traffic issues in the deer herd and the wintering areas. And again, look forward to seeing that being addressed through the DEP process. Anything else, Jeff?
No, but thank you.
Very good. Good question.
No,
Thank you for bringing that up.
Getting
And again,
appreciate the questions in right. Sorry.
absolutely. Any other questions or comments from the public? We're still in public hearing.
Yep, I'm going to make some comments.
Absolutely.
My name's Gretchen Ross. Our property abuts the Tupper Farm. My maiden name is Tupper. I grew up on that farm. So I'm not going to spare you my emotional comments because it's my family farm. And Chris Tupper is my nephew, and he sold that farm without talking to the family. He's never lived there as an adult. He wasn't being a good neighbor. But that's neither here nor there. I understand that, it's just business. So I'm reading this because I'm not a great public speaker, and I had a few things that I wanted to say. This is a statement about the loss of our family farm. Many farm families have lost their farms in Maine. I did some research. In Maine, 573 farms were lost between 2012 and 2017, which is the most recent data I could find. My family farm has been a working farm in Fairfield, Maine since the early 1900s. My great-grandfather purchased the farm after he came over from England. He was a first-generation immigrant. The value is more than monetary to us. I can remember having a picture taken with my great-grandfather when he was in his 90s, and I was about 3 on that farm. My grandfather was a dairy farmer there. He used to use a horse and buggy to deliver milk along the road into residents in the Oakland area. My father grew up on that farm, and after he served 4 years in World War II, earning a Bronze Star, he came back and decided to farm. Farmers really are quite an amazing group of people, and I think sometimes that small farmers are not really given credit due. But having watched what my family did, my father was a carpenter, he was an electrician, he was a mechanic, he was a machinist, he was an expert in animal husbandry and in taking care of the property. My mom was a housewife. She raised 6 children there, and we learned a lot of ethics about farming. Jeff was our neighbor. He worked with my dad for years. Right? Benny. The family farm was part of the community. It wasn't just us. People used to come there and buy milk from my mom, and she knew all of the people. My dad was active in the Grange. They have pins for 75-year pins in the Grange. They're very active there. So the farm is more than just a bunch of land and some old buildings. Research about the loss of family farms in Maine has shown some other statistics that I feel like are important. The number of farmers 34 years old and younger has increased by 40% in the years between 2012 and 2017. And the number of women farmers has nearly doubled. The total sale of organic farm products in Maine rose from $36.4 million to over $60 million to 2017, and that trend is continuing. So losing the farm land impacts the opportunity for some of our young people to be able to farm. My daughter is one of those young people who had dreams of being able to farm on that property. And she is not someone who's just a dreamer. She's getting her master's degree right now in food studies from the BU in Boston. She is a Fulbright scholar and will be spending a year in Bulgaria studying their food systems for them. And she works in the food industry in Boston. Actually, she's a cheesemonger for an international cheese importer and exporter. And she hoped to be able to start a small business there, a small farm, being able to raise sheep and make sheep as a product. So there are opportunities for building small farms, and we're well aware. We're not stupid. I have really smart parents, so I know I'm not stupid. We understand, we all understand that businesses need to be in our communities. We need the tax revenue. We understand that. I work in the high school. Some of you have met me there. And over the past years, I have watched teachers and programs be cut continually because we don't have enough tax revenue from businesses in our district. So I do understand the importance of that. However, that being said, I don't like the idea of our beautiful land being covered with 69,000 solar panels that are being fast-tracked because of politics right now. And so, I guess I don't have anything else to say. My husband will be asking questions that we have made a list of. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments about farms, because Fairfield is a farm community.
All right, if I go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm John Ross. Gretchen and I basically bought, we're lucky enough to buy 12 acres of land that abut opposite of Jeff on the south side. And we developed that property and have built a nice home there for our family, and basically extending the Tupper farm. And we also bought the property across from the road. One of the things we tried to do was actually retain some of the original Tupper property, and we bought a home, small home, across from us, and that was actually Gretchen and Cynthia's aunt. Walter and Margaret had built that, and their daughter Liz, her cousin Liz Davis, owned that property, and we bought that from her. So basically we've been able to retain some of the property around the original Tupper farm. And Gretchen's sister, Cynthia, with her husband, Kurt, basically worked with Brian and bought their parents' home and remodeled that property and made that a nice home for her and her family, and basically have created a nice area all the way down to Fish Brook and overlooking the property down on the lower east side of that property. So basically Gretchen's sister and Gretchen basically are trying to retain some legacy of that property. Gretchen and I talked about once we found out more from the notice that came out from the solar farm people, that we went and talked about making a proposal to retain the property in the front of the old farm buildings that were there, that Brian Tupper owned, that got passed on to Chris. But Brian and Donna had those set of buildings, and we basically, I worked with Bruce Metric and Parker. They talked a little bit about it as they were giving you the initial proposal, and we had sent this proposal here, where the back half of our property could be utilized as a swap to retain the front portion for the original buildings and along Route 23. It actually would create a buffer for the people that live there, you know, the Tupper family, and be able to actually not have solar panels that you're facing directly and everybody's looking at on all sides. I think there's some issues. I know Bruce and Parker basically made another proposal to us, and I see on the new revision that come out, I think it must be due to the land, to the water drainage. It looks like the back half of this property doesn't have solars in the new revision that I see up on the board, and they're talking about maybe giving or having some swapping going on there. So that is something we've talked about before this meeting, and I understand with Chimbro and the solar company doing a large amount of pre-capital expenditure, you know, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to this point. We didn't realize exactly what was going to happen until we got a notice, and, you know, here we are today. So we are trying to retain that property and try to maintain the base Tupper property that Robert and Muriel, you know, Robert would have wanted to retain as some type of working farm. And as Gretchen said, you know, we have a proposal, and we would like our daughter to maybe be able to utilize that buffer property. And in this case, we believe that you can still retain enough solar coverage, giving some options here to move things around and be able to get both revenue of, you know, solar farms, and also we would increase the tax value of that property for the town also, as we've developed, you know, the 12-acre farm. I don't know if Gretchen and I have that big red gambrel barn just south, right across from Mark Weeks, and we basically have made that a lot nicer property on that south side of the main farm. So that's kind of my statement. I do believe, you know, things have changed where, you know, the daughters are trying to pass this on and create a heritage, you know, for the Tupper farm. And I guess my first question, I have a few questions. Would the planning board consider a change in this proposal that we're talking about? If we come back with a redesign with some panel footage to give us that front barrier area, and we resorted panels with Chimbro to be able to retain the original Tupper farm, would that be something that would be considered?
Well, if that is a question to the planning board,
It is.
the planning board would consider any application coming in. Now, if this application is revised because of your negotiations with Chimbro, that's fine with the planning board. So we really don't have a say in that discussion. It's between you, John, and the developers. And if you have proposals, now's the time to get into discussions with Chimbro about that.
Right. That's what, we wanted to just bring that forward so that we could make you aware of that situation, and then hopefully we can continue to have some discussion with Chimbro.
They were prepared to have one discussion.
So, I think Jeff pretty much covered, the buffer. We're on the south line. There's a 35-foot setback, and there's vegetation sitting like on top of the fence. I think you referred to that. So I didn't quite understand what is the vegetation line on the south fence that looks like it's sitting on top of that? Is there a vegetation line that's 35 in, and then there's another set of trees that are on that fence on that south side?
So the question is to Fairfield Solar, on the south line, we talked to Jeff Pellerin where the gravel road is about his buffers and setbacks on the north side. So the question is, on the south line, there's a fence line there, and it's vegetated. I see a note on your map that says 20-foot side setback from property line, and then I see the fence line further in. Can you clarify what's on the south line for John?
So we wouldn't cut those trees that are on the property line. Our panels would be, and I don't know, don't quote me on the exact figure, but they would be well away from that property line. By design, because of the shading of those existing trees, we would be well to the north of that line. And the fence would be essentially 20 feet off of those panels, and the remaining land, we wouldn't be doing anything with.
As I look at the scale on that south fence, it appears to me that on the north side, if you've got the stone wall and some space and a fence line and then a road and then your panels, it appears to me for that shadowing line that the solar panels are further away on that south fence. That this is not to scale, so I can't say what it is, but it appears to be, according to the scale in the corner, about 100 feet from your property line, John, to the solar panels. That's what it appears on the maps.
Yes.
Okay?
I agree with
That's purely for shading.
So
That's right. For shading, we would be approximately 100 feet. That sounds
Okay.
about right.
does that answer your question, John,
Yep.
on the south line?
We also kind of had a question about the vegetation that would be planted along the fence.
Okay. Is there vegetation, not shown on this plan, but is there vegetation designed for the south line in that 100-foot buffer zone?
So on that south line, you'd have your existing trees that would be on the abutting property, and then the remainder from the property line towards the panels would be just vegetation meadow. And that would only be mowed twice a year.
Okay. So that would be vegetated meadow, 100 feet.
So the trees are deciduous trees, so our view is fine during the summer, but the leaves fall off those trees, and our view from there will be uninterrupted to all of those solar panels there inside our house.
A quick question I have, is that chain link fence designed to be slatted for visual buffer? A slatted chain link fence or an open chain link fence?
Sign is open right now.
Yeah, right now, but we've done different shading, screening in the past.
Okay, John, do you understand that?
Yeah, so I guess really our house property, it goes up there maybe 750 feet. Is it possible to put a vegetation barrier at the fence
Yes.
up until just past? So in other words, where our house line on the south fence, right, it only comes up, past our house, I'm gonna say 750 feet. Could a vegetation barrier be put up at the fence?
Yeah, I think there's a little gap there, isn't there, in the existing
Yeah.
trees, I believe.
Yeah, so
So that's somewhere similar to the other side of the property, we can put some buffer.
We can work with you to put, vegetation in that area, just show us where you want it.
And John,
we were following the guidance on the buffer area based on the ordinance.
So it sounds like you would put in a vegetarian buffer.
Yes, they
Vegetation
will talk to you about that. And again, there's an opening area that you're concerned about for visibility?
Right, from our main house.
Yep.
We'd be looking right at.
Okay, and
The buffer panel.
and Jeff has a similar thing. He said 300 yards back where there's openings they'd like to close off. Okay?
Yep.
So there's a water drainage, I know you talked about that quite a bit, but the backfield and our house is actually somewhat controlled by water from this property. So this property comes into a drainage area in a gully right along this line. Also back a little bit further, it actually goes through and drains behind us in another gully area. How is that going to be retained once the panels are in there? How is that drainage going to be handled?
I guess the question is, and maybe the answer may be obvious, but you are not changing any water flow or any water flow direction that is currently happening. That is not going to change, is that correct?
That is correct. We will
Okay.
not be changing any of the water flow. from the
None of the water flow will be changing, John.
Okay, thank you. Are any of the fences electrified?
Are any of the fences electrified?
No.
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 Is there any anticipated changes in our property taxes with a solar farm around us?
The question, again, is taxes, and if there's $30 million worth of solar panels there, if anything, your tax value should go down. It affects the mill rate.
Would our property be valued less if it was evaluated?
Would the property be valued less because of the solar farm, is your question? Dare to take a stab at that, Nicole?
I am not a tax assessor, so I do not have an answer for that
Okay.
question.
Okay.
But we could, Jay is in on Friday, tax assessor.
That would be a great question for our tax assessor.
Is there increased tax revenue from this project?
Yes.
And will a portion of that tax money be used to support education?
I believe...
Will be increased?
I believe that the tax revenue, the mill rate, supports the educational systems, yes. And extra tax revenue generated from these kind of projects supports the town and its tax base, yes.
Will there be a substation on the property? I see single transformers on the drawing.
There are transformer pads shown on the north line,
Yep.
and none are shown on the south face.
Is there a main substation on either one of these units?
Any main substations that we do not see on these drawings today?
No.
No.
Will there be another phase to utilize the property behind our property that we bought from Liz Davis, a small house? So there's a meadow field behind there.
Is there any anticipated added phases coming?
No. No, we don't intend to put any additional solar panels on that part of the land. I think if you go back to the presentation that we made, you can see the different, excuse me, environmental features that are there. Makes it really chopped up, and it just doesn't make sense to try to, put a solar facility in that where you have long spaces where you're trying to connect. That, little aside, that happens a lot. A lot of people come to us and say, we saw what you did in Pittsfield and we liked it. Could you do this with our land? And then we do, we go and we take a look. And as you all know, wetland doesn't have to have water on it to be a wetland. It's all the soils type. And in fact, that confused me before I got, into this business a long time ago with development, that it doesn't have to be water on it to be a wetland. It's all soil type. And so once you get, I had a friend who has a dairy farm down in Waldeboro, and we went down there as a favor and looked at it because it looked like a lot of great open land, and over half of it was wet by the soil standards, and it would make a solar facility look like a checkerboard, and it just doesn't make sense to do that.
That answer your question, John?
So the answer to the question, is it yes or no?
The answer to the question is that they don't further intend to develop further back there because of the wetlands.
Oh, but that means they could in the future.
I believe on their property, they could do anything they want in the future, but the question was, do they plan on doing a phased section out back? And that was asked and answered as no.
Okay.
Yeah, let me, because we're never trying to be cute with our words. I don't like cute. And so when we say there's no plan there to do it, and what, if it would have been easier, if it would have been better to construct it on that land, we would have moved up towards the road, because that would have lengthened that would have shortened up the paths to get the electricity to the pole and then down the way. But you could see, till we found land that was not wet and didn't get chopped up by all the different environmental features, we ended up down, further down the back of that eastern property, further away from, the interconnection points and so on. So that kind of demonstrates the fact that, well, we didn't go in the first place there, so why would we go there in the future?
That answer your question,
Yep.
John?
What is the voltage off the main secondary of the transformers from the solar farm? So in other words, the transformers have the solar panels, and then those invert over to the voltage going to the transmission line. What is that voltage?
Give that to Ted.
Yeah.
This is Ted Gifford. I'm the power generation manager at RLC Engineering and supporting Chimbro in this project. The voltage at the road would be the same as the voltage on the high side of that transformer. So I believe the voltage is 34,500 volts on the road. On the other side of the transformer, on the secondary side, which is on the same side as the panels, that voltage is, I believe, 600 volts.
Okay. Is in the transmission side, is there any EMF considerations that are done? I mean, it's not like a substation line or anything. And is there any like humming noise from transformers, anything like that in the environment?
Yes, we do evaluate the the harmonics, if you want, from the transformers. And those transformers are the same type of typical transformers that you'd find in residential developments. So they are pad mounted, fully enclosed, green colored transformers. And the harmonics levels are acceptable for residential use, as an example. We also look at the inverters, which is another piece of electrical equipment, and the harmonics involved in that are lower than the transformers.
So there's no mechanical noise at all?
No. On the high side of the transformers, when we're dealing with the same as the roadside voltage, the lines come up underground to the pole, run up the poles, and then across from pole to pole to the road. So those are the same types of installations that you would find along the road that would go to a residence.
So gotta keep moving on with questions, is that okay?
That's fine. No, go
So
ahead.
on the east side, access road that goes down to Fishbrook and the transmission line from the Route 23, can that line be put underground so there's not poles going across Cynthia and Kurt's house going down to the Fishbrook area?
They can be. I'm not sure that the part of those poles would be owned by Central Maine Power. And I'm not sure that we would be able to dictate to them whether those poles would be underground poles or not. That is something we could look into.
Bruce here a second. The current plan is to do what they call overbuild, so that you're not putting in different poles and new poles.
That's roadside. Oh, he's talking down. He's not talking the collection down the east side.
Oh, the collection.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I think the answer would be, we'll certainly consider it. Ted, you said it just right. We'll look at that. John?
Yep, I think we understand that you would need a pole to transfer over Route 23. Our consideration would be to go underground from there down to the east farm past Fishbrook, if that's possible.
Yep. John, we'll look at that.
Quick question from the board. You're crossing quite a bit of wetlands and wooded wetlands. Is that an environmental issue, going to underground in those wetlands and wooded wetlands? Isn't it cleaner to be overhead?
There's different options for that, so, I mean, we could span the wetland stream area with a pole on either side and span that overhead.
John, is it only a concern at the house up on the road? There's 3 poles shown coming in next to the house on the east side. Is it the concern I'm near the house, or is it down back in Fishbrook?
Well, I think really if you stand at Cynthia's house, you got quite a view down through there. We would like to have it all the way to Fishbrook, and if they had to go back up over Fishbrook, that might be, but we would like to have it underground all the way down to the water area.
That is just a question.
So I think the takeaway is, what we hear is you are concerned about that view. We hear that, and we'll look at options to mitigate that. And the other one that comes to my mind is, okay, if it has to be overhead because there's a bunch of environmental features to avoid, can we run that down a tree line, near a tree line, as opposed to out in the middle of the field? Those are the things we'd love to look at.
Very good. Thank you very much.
So that once we go over Fishbrook, we're asking that if it goes back on a pole line and it heads north, could that also be underground once it transfers back to the solar panel on the east side of Fishbrook? So that we don't have an overhead line going north up to the transformers.
I think we'd have to look at that too, just as far as the environmental features on that side, so.
John, question. Can you see these high-tension lines that are on the back of the property?
Yes.
You can see those as well?
Yes.
You're not asking for those to go underground?
No. Those are actually the substation lines.
Correct.
So we're just basically wanting to go underground on that set of lines that are actually would be overhead all the way down to the east farm. Go underground, so that we're not seeing that pole line.
Right now, if you're following there's an existing farm road that goes up on the other side of Fishbrook, so on the transmission line of Fishbrook, which was the intent to minimize some of the environmental impacts on that side.
Thank you. Anything else, John?
I have a few more questions, is that okay?
It's fine. Keep going. We'll go get our sleeping bags.
So, farmers always consider it, what do they call it? Magic soil? There's a lot of loom developed from the cows and farming. Is this gonna be stripped? The loom gonna be stripped on the east? And is the west gonna be de-stumped and stripped to get the solar panels in?
So most definitely not. To minimize any erosion concerns during construction, we will not be stripping topsoil. The wetland areas will be using timber mats or some sort of a stabilizing mat system for any equipment that would need to go out into those areas. So our goal is to protect that topsoil, because that will help us revegetate the site and turn it into a meadow post-construction.
So there won't be like dumping gravel or digging or bulldozing, is what you're saying?
No, for the wooded forested area, there is going to be some stumping, and that material, the stumps will be ground up into what's called erosion control mix, and we'll be using that to protect the wetlands and the streams during construction. Post-construction, that will either be spread out and revegetated or removed from site, depending on the location.
So the buffer vegetation that's on the west, right on Route 23, is there going to be a different fence here, or is it going to be, it looks like a heavier, much heavier vegetation?
Whereabouts are you, John?
So,
Which side?
right on Route 23, on the west side, there's a heavy, it looks like a heavy vegetation, added trees, is that what that is, or along the
They are
fence, along
calling
the
for on
fence
the
line?
west side, a vegetated buffer evergreen tree planting 8 feet on center. That's shown along the Route 23 on the west side.
You asking about a fence or something there?
Yes, my question with that, and I will propose, that's right across from my house. It's right in my face, literally. There is no setback at 50 feet, which is state requirement. So what is going to buffer my view from those panels on that Route 23? The vegetation, I'm sure, will be seedlings that will not grow up until I'm well off this earth, so I would like to know what is going to be done there.
I didn't hear that question.
Can we have a repeat of the question?
I believe the question is, would you identify the wooded buffer zone on the west side of 23 across from the existing house that's shown on your plan? So we're on the west side of 23, where you have a label that there are evergreen tree plantings 8 feet on center. Can you identify roughly what these trees are, species, size, how close? She's concerned about her visibility looking at the solar farm from her house.
So they'd be an evergreen tree is what we're proposing at this time, planted roughly 8 feet apart to allow them to grow in.
How tall, how big are these trees?
I don't know that we've proposed a initial height, and I'm not aware of something in the ordinance, but there might be. Corey?
I'm aware of, but we typically buy 4 to 6 foot tall, and then they grow from there.
Okay, the answer is 4 to 6 foot tall evergreens is what's being proposed.
8 feet
And
apart.
are they staggered or in a line?
They're in a line right now.
So there is one 4-foot tree every 8 feet?
Yes,
Okay,
that's what's being proposed.
And the spacing is so they can grow in as they grow.
but if they were staggered and there was a couple of rows, then they would have better buffer visibility before the trees grew up. Okay. Anything else, John?
I think I heard we would start the project 6 months after approval. Is that what I heard earlier? Or
Yes, yes.
how long is the project, would the project take for installation?
I believe they're talking about 10 months.
And where would all the people that come there, would there be some type of temporary parking, housing, offices? Where would all that be?
They're typically, as you see these go up on their property, they create parking areas where their job site trailers are. They are on their property meeting and dispersing their people, and they can answer that better than I can.
What you said is true, and, you know, there'll be maybe one construction trailer, and, you know, we plan on this being all local people, not setting up any kind of temporary housing for them, et cetera, et cetera. So there won't be a man camp, a person camp, or any kind of housing on site.
That answer your question, John?
That's all I have.
All
Thank
set?
you.
Thank you. Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Tupper, email. Gretchen's baby sister. My husband and I moved back here about 7 years ago. I'm not going to go into all of the emotional detail. It was to preserve and protect part of the Tupper farm. We have a small portion of it, which is outlined on the plan. A couple of the things is we're very sorry that this happened. We're very sorry that Chris did what he did. He had other options. One of them was to sell the farm to myself at fair market value. We do have water rights. This has been an ongoing conversation with Chimbro about what to do. The well is on 29 Oakland Road. I live at 28. The power comes from the big barn. We currently pay the electricity for that. They have offered to drill us a well. That is correct. We understand that it's on Chimbro's dime. They get the say. However, they did show up at our house one night with a quit-claim deed, asking us to sign it, without any contract of when, how, water quality, would there be water purifiers if they could not reach water. We want to make sure that our quality of water is pure and at the quantity that the farm well took care of 2 homes and 3 barns and outside preservation of the animals. So my question is, first question there is, we will move forward with the well, but we want a contract. We don't want to have to sign a quit-claim deed to our water rights with nothing in place. Is that something that can and will be done?
So I'll answer that. This is Parker. I'm not an attorney, so I want to be careful I don't get out over my tips. What we feel strongly about is you have water rights on property that we bought. We want you to have water. So our intent was candidly to drill you a well on your side of the road and solve your problems forever. That's how simple it was in our mind. Quit claim deed is where I'm not an attorney, and I'll get over my tips here carefully. That core ethos, we will absolutely live up to. If there's some paper trail that has to be executed to make sure that if we do a well for you, we are free and clear of any encumbrances on our land, that to me seems fair, and that would be our goal. So we can sit and talk about this separately with all the right folks, but you have our word. Our intent was to satisfy your water right.
So you are willing to put it in writing that, let's say that you can't get viable water on our side of the road, you will add water purifiers?
I think I'm going to be careful, choose my words carefully here.
I'm sorry?
We want to make sure you have a dependable water supply. So let's just take a worst case scenario that we drill a well that yields nothing, right? Then I think the right thing to do is that we spent that money and that's our risk and we took a bet and we lost. And I think the right thing is that we're gonna figure out how to satisfy you with the existing water supply you had on the other side of the road.
Okay, because we haven't heard back from anybody since I asked, had my lawyer take a look at the quitclaim deed, and he did in December. He contacted you, and there has been no response from Chimbro.
Yeah, I actually think a legal person from our team actually chatted with your attorney, and we sensed that there was no hurry on your part, so that's just a misunderstanding. We'll pick this up tomorrow. We're eager to reach a resolution with you.
Okay, a couple of other questions that I have. What happens when this is done? Who maintains it?
Well, okay, what's your...
Are they community
No,
people?
You don't need to raise your
Sorry.
voice, we're right here. Is your question who maintains the grounds?
Who will maintain the solar panels? Will it be community jobs? Is it going to be jobs given to people outside of the state?
Go for it. I mean, our plan is to own and operate the facility like we do in Pittsfield. And those are people that live and work in our area. That's our plan.
You get the answer? They maintain their own, they do hire people within the community. It's really just mowing twice a year around the panels, and that's really the only maintenance that's done on the grounds.
What's the lifetime, what's the lifespan, excuse me, of a solar farm?
Lifespan of these panels.
The lifespan of the panels, the useful life of the facility is about 30 to 35 years. As panels, sometimes there's a problem with them, you replace them, and that's right out of industry standards. And again, when you make an investment like this, the panels account for about maybe 20-25% of the project cost. Everything else is in development, the foundations, the inverters, the wiring, and so on and so forth. So it's easy to upgrade panels and remove them, put new panels in if something happens to them. But that's what we're seeing on there. And then at the end of the life, or if we decided that, okay, we're going to decommission the plant, then that decommissioning is again part of the DEP process, and they require a bond that gets put up by all the developers so that the facility can be taken out of there and salvaged and disposed of properly. That's going to be in the DEP permit.
So they're not just left there to leak and, okay.
Yep.
As John and I you kind of talked back and forth, one of the proposals that we had made to Chimbro was to swap the well. We would pay for our own well for the property that is just south of our driveway. Again, we never had any feedback on that from Chimbro. The plan does put the access road right through that piece of property that we asked to swap out. We do understand that that is probably the best place to put it for Chimbro. Please understand that with this project, and Kurt's in my existing house, I will have one window to look out and not see fence, solar panels, electric lines, and substations or transformers. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow. I understand this tax revenue. I understand that Fairfield is going to get taxed. I'd like to see one of you have to just have your bathroom window for the next 35 years to look out of. I look across the road, the family farm is being destroyed. They're putting solar panels. literally 50 feet from the center of the road at the end of my driveway to John and Gretchen's property, Jeff Pellerin's property. I look out my back window, I see a transmission line going down the farm property up to what was called the flat. Yes, you have added a meadow area. I will see every single solar panel that is there. I look out the other side, I see an access road, which there will be trucks, 7 days a week, perhaps 12-hour days, perhaps more, perhaps less, going up and down this road, making noise. Is there going to be a noise buffer put up between our home and that access road? You said you were putting 4-foot trees up. The land across the road is elevated from my home. A 4-foot tree may as well be a 2-foot tree or a foot tree. What is going to be done with that fence? Is it a wooden fence? Is it an open chain link fence?
Is that a question?
Yes,
Okay, the question is, on the roadside,
on the roadside.
is there behind the wooded buffer zone, where the fence is that going to be a privacy slatted fence or an open fence? That's the question.
You do a privacy fence.
We could do a slatted fence.
Slatted
and
privacy.
we talked about the zigzagging too, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Staggering the trees.
Okay, so the answer is they'll put a slatted fence, probably green slats, and possibly staggered trees for the wooded buffer zone.
And now on the access road that literally, well, first of all, thank you for at least moving it off from our driveway. We realize you could have used our driveway with the existing deed as your access road. Thank you for not doing that. However, with that being said, this is property that we have used since we've moved back. Our garden is there. We literally, when we plow our driveway, our snow goes onto Chimbro's property now, because my brother and I had a deal, and he had the farmland. The property line at the road is about 3 feet off from my driveway. There is a buffer zone right now that shows that. However, like I said, this was property that we asked to swap. We offered to give them an access point, knowing that. Again, no answer from Chimbro. Is there, once you put this 20-foot road in the middle of the field, what is going to be put up to deaden the sound for our home?
Are you asking about the construction noise or after construction?
During construction.
Okay, during the construction.
After construction is done, we realize that that will be minimal. But during the 10 months plus, because we know construction jobs are never on time. So for 10 months, 7 days a week, there will be trucks and bulldozers and people up and down, maybe 100 feet from our house. Will there be any sound deadening put in?
Thank you for the question. You brought up a good point that I neglected to discuss when we were going over the overview. So construction, traffic, grading is going to be very limited. So the use of heavy construction equipment is going to be very minimal. There is some trenching, so you probably will see an excavator for that, but that is a very limited portion of the project. The construction times, we will be meeting the town ordinance, which I believe is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for any type of construction activity. And I think there's also some limitations on holidays. So it will not be 7 days a week. It will not be 24 hours a day. We just don't want to disturb the neighbors that way. That's not the right thing to do. As far as, I think your second question was post-construction and screening of that area. We will work with you on some type of a screening for that area, whether it's slatted fencing, privacy fencing, any type of, different types of plantings that would be better for you to screen your view.
Because, like I said, as of now, we're losing our garden, we're losing where we're gonna put our snow. We're losing the property that my dog runs on.
So, let me dive into that.
Yeah.
So there is, I'm thinking there's a bunch of property adjacent to the house that we are not developing with panels. And I'm sensitive to your view shed discussion. We get that, we understand that. As far as the intricacies of the logistics of how you use your property, snow removal, a garden here or whatnot, I just believe we can work with you on all of that. I think we have the space, I know we have the willingness, and I think we should just meet you now in these post-COVID times. I think we just need to come walk the property with you and understand each other more completely than we do sitting here right now. And obviously, as the COVID threat goes away, we're in a much better position to meet, have good conversations. So we're eager to do that.
Okay, one question, my sister Gretchen talked about her daughter wanting to come back and farm. My son, who was a police officer in Bangor, had always had interest in being a farmer on the top of a farm. He spent 10 years doing windmills and solar panels. And one of the questions that he is proposing to perhaps the town of Fairfield, the state of Maine, who are you selling the power to?
Go for it.
Who are we selling the power to? The plan, we're trying to be forward-looking on this. The plan is to bid into when, if you follow the legislation that's going on, the governor's climate change initiative is going to be putting RFPs out. They're putting some out now, they're putting more out, there's going to be more to come, to sell the power to the Maine PUC as part of the governor's climate change initiative to meet the greenhouse gas emission standards up and through, I think it's 2050. So that is our intent. It will go into the main grid, tie in there at a CMP substation, county road substation, and the power purchase agreement is planned to be with, bid into and win from the ones that are going to come out from the Maine PUC. That is in fact where the power purchase agreement is for the Pittsfield solar facility. It was awarded to us about 5.5 years ago by, a similar process called Maine Community Renewable Energy. And we would not have been investing this kind of time and effort if we didn't see a clear path to propose projects into that, that again supports the governor's climate change initiative and climate council, which I'm sure you've all been following. So that's the plan.
So your plan is for all of the electricity generated from the solar farm to benefit Maine residents and Maine residents only?
So there's a distinction there. Can I dive in?
Yeah.
So, John's an electrician, John Ross, and he knows this well, but for others, what Bruce answered is there are main RFPs that we're responding to and anticipate being successful as we have in other projects we have going. An electron will go wherever it wants to go, wherever the biggest suction is in the grid of ISO New England. So this is a finer point than most people want to talk about in a public meeting at the town office, but I don't like it when I hear developers talk about that those electrons are only going to Maine homes. That's not true of anything we create in the state of Maine, because of the electrons will go to where they are needed the most. Yeah. We expect our commercial arrangement to be with the Maine PUC to respond to the building administration climate issue.
The key words are what I said. I mean, I should have been, I promised myself I wasn't going to use acronyms, but I did. So the power purchase agreement is going, the power purchase agreements that are going to be coming out are with the Maine Public Utility Commission. And then they take them, and then that power gets set into the standard offer rates that you see when you can pick a standard offer rate, or you can go with someone else, you can select your own. So the fact that it's going, our plan is for it to go to the Maine PUC power purchase agreement process. That's where it benefits the citizens of Maine. So I've given you a contractual answer there, not the electrical engineering answer, because once the electron goes in, they're not, you can't tell them apart, and they flow. And I'm a mechanical engineer, so I use a plumbing analogy. You pump the water into the pipes, and wherever the water is needed, that's where the water goes. But the commercial arrangement is going to be within Maine.
Okay, just a couple more things. As I said earlier, I'll have one window to look out. That's my bathroom window, so it's about, standard bathroom size, and not see this mess. And I'm sorry, it is a mess. On the east side, on top of the hill, on what we call the flat, we are requesting that once you hit Fishbrook, you take a hard left with your power poles, so that it goes behind the trees. If you cannot go underground, as John has requested. We're requesting that the transformers not be visible from our house if at all possible. We realize that in the new plans tonight that you have a bit of a meadow up there. Still, from my house to the CMP power lines is exactly 1/2 mile. I can visibly see CMP's power lines from my home. Therefore, we will see all of those solar panels up there, even with a meadow. Will there be a vegetative line to block those panels? And if so, what is that going to be?
Well, I think, again, what Parker said, I think we get together and we now that we're able to all meet and stuff, we walk the site with you and see exactly where you need, where the existing trees are, and put the power lines behind there if it's at all possible, and then also do vegetative screening there. I'm looking over now at the east side and where that is, and I suggest we get together and walk that and say, and make you happy about it, as happy as you can be.
And I think all of us would be very happy to have a secondary sit-down meeting with Chimbrow and Fairfield Solar to work out the logistics.
Yep, you got it.
What you're saying, meetings with each of the family members, with John and with yourself.
If we need to go that route to have those secondary meetings, I'm willing to sit down with you. If you want to repropose the plan and bring it back to the planning board, I will.
Yeah, that's what I suggest we do, is make arrangements to meet, you have your property concerns, we meet with you. John and Gretchen, the Rosses have their property concerns, we meet with them, and we just address them, because everybody's view site is going to be different.
Well, we're small neighbors, and, but we're miney. Some of you people from Fairfield may remember several years ago, we talk about proud communities and small communities. A tire grinding plant was proposed where my sister and brother-in-law's home is. Mark Weeks, my father, Paul Mushrow, and a few of the other neighbors were able to stop it because they would not work with them. Can we stop this? No, what's done is done. We're willing to work with you to make it as palatable for everyone, including the town of Fairfield. Now, bringing up Mr. Weeks. Mr. Weeks owns the budding property on the flat, it'd be on the south side. He's not here this evening. There's been a long-term arrangement with the Weeks family to walk across what is now Chimbro's property, across the bridge, up to the right side of the hill to his property. Now, maybe he's contacted you, we don't know. What concessions are going to be made for the people like Mark?
Well,
And again, we would meet with folks if they want to meet. We'll meet one-on-one with each family and try to resolve whatever issues they have.
Now, I might suggest that Mr. Weeks, he's a great guy, but let him contact and ask questions. He could have been here tonight. He could have asked through Zoom. So let's not ask third-party questions of someone that's not here tonight. And also keep in mind that this proposal here tonight in front of us meets the ordinance. So if Chimbro's willing to meet with you and talk about some of these things, that's great. But keep in mind that these requests and requirements or questions you're asking are not required within our ordinance.
Understandable.
So I would, again, encourage this meeting. There are some valid questions, especially about the deer trafficking, the liability issues for Mr. Pellerin, buffer zones, but be realistic and be fair. Because if, for example, you're asking Chimbro to run underground lines for half a mile and the added cost is $4 million, you know, that is a consideration they may or may not entertain.
Understandable.
So ask the practical things that affect you the most, your visibilities, your buffer zones. They seem very receptive to larger trees, staggered trees, so that looking across the road, you're looking at woods and trees that are staggered and growing up, absolutely makes sense. We as a board, just me personally, will support what you're trying to do. But please, take it up with Chimbro, have meetings with them, come to a concession reasonably that is fair to you and fair to them, so they can proceed on with their project. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're very serious about investing in Fairfield, very serious about the tax rate and the mill rate, how this will affect that. There's a small project in Waterville I'm working on with a different company. That company is going to pay Waterville 90 times more taxes than I currently pay on a 40-acre field. So the revenue stream is real. That's just an example of Waterville's. But the revenue stream is real to help our town, our educational system, and the running of our town.
And we want to make sure that when this is, that Fairfield benefits from it. Not just Fairfield, but the Oakland Road.
Absolutely.
And to Jeff's point with the deer do travel from west to east and east to west between our house and Gretchen's house on a regular basis. Almost every day, I think. This spring, we counted visible on both sides of the road, 56 deer within a 20-minute period. And probably at least 20 of those deer did cross the road. So it is a concern about the wildlife.
Then that DEP requires that. Requires them to identify any wildlife refuge areas, any deer winning areas, all the traffic areas. That is part of a study ordered by DEP. So Jeff's concerns about that are valid.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? We're still in public hearing.
I think we ought to just make sure that the board and the residents hear us. We'll reach out to the residents and set up meetings in the very near term to get a better view of these concerns and make sure that our plans address them as we work forward in our process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is not anything new. We're still in public hearing. To see our farmers have major changes in their livelihoods. I've been working with farmers. We did the Holmes Farm project, we did the Hapworth Farm project, we did the projects in Winslow, and it's really sad to see these farms that are trying to milk 100 head make a living. The Maine Milk Commission regulates how much a pound they're going to get, and we've seen farmers backsided on all these programs. It's very sad that farms are taken apart, and the project that we've worked with in the past made sure that the farmers, a prerequisite to any workout with the bank, we made sure that the farmers' children ended up with a lot on the farm. That was a requirement to keep these farms going. And the farms that we were involved with kept the farm going, kept some use of grass or farm going. So it is a valid concern. The ordinance, that we only enforce the ordinance, we do not write the ordinance, and we do not change the ordinance. But if I had my say, we would change housing. I would not allow within our ordinance see trailers showing up on farm fields and seeing trailers lined up and double wides lined up. You're taking farm property apart to make it into housing, and there are ways to do that tastefully, and there are ways not to do it tastefully. This is something new that we're seeing with these solar farms coming our way. You're going to see a lot more solar farms coming our way with the chemical problems we're having on our farms. These farms cannot support livestock, cannot grow grasses, cannot be fed to dairy cows. We have a major problem with the forever chemicals in Fairfield. You are going to see more solar farms on these properties that are distressed because there's no other use of those farms to turn revenue back to these families that own these farms. So sit back, you're going to see a whole lot more coming our way because of the forever chemicals that are on our farms. Okay, we did not bring this to us, we didn't ask for this, but we have a lot of contaminated water. We have a lot of contaminated soil. DEP currently is testing 50 sites in Fairfield right now for soil and water contamination with the forever chemicals. So that is another problem we're going to deal with, that you're going to see changes on these farms that cannot farm anymore, probably or possibly going to go to solar. So there is a good use for solar in these applications that can't be used for anything else. It's sad about this farm, and I hope that you spend some time with Chimbro to try to fine-tune some of these issues. They're all valid issues. And that being said, I have a lot of notes here, and I would like to proceed on the agenda, close in public hearing, and go for their waiver that they're asking for. And this board could propose this waiver tonight, which is the waiver for the timeline. But there are so many outstanding items here, and that I'm wondering if we should table this for another submission. So that is just my thoughts and my suggestion. But let's move on the agenda. Everybody has spoke, everybody's asked their questions, and again, I encourage you to iron out the details with Chimbro. It's a sad situation, but make it the best you can. It's not great. Make it the best you can so that you can live there in peace and harmony. That's all we ask, okay? That being said, I'd like to close the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. And next item on the agenda under new business is the conditional use permit application for Fairfield Solar LLC to construct a 20-megawatt solar farm located at 29 Oakland Road, Assessors Map 2, Lot 38, and Map 24, Lot 1, in the Rural Residential Land Use District. First, I'd like to ask about the 18-month waiver. Is the board read the documents? You read the Chimbro letter? You understand what this waiver is about? And it's very true. Chimbro cannot, the CMP, excuse me, cannot react quick enough to make our timeline. And we may consider, if this is going to be an ongoing issue, and I don't see any daylight, that CMP, excuse me, can act any quicker than they have been for the past year or two. So we may consider changing something in our ordinance that allows this 18-month period, since that's the timeline it's going to take anyway. So, that being said, under new business, is there any discussion on the request waiver for 18 months as opposed to the 12-month that we currently have in our ordinance?
I make a motion to accept the 18 months.
Have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, the motion is granted for the 18-month extension. That being said, are we, I'm speaking to the board, are we prepared to proceed with the finding of fact on this issue, or are there too many outstanding items to proceed on that?
I think there are too many outstanding items, and there needs to be meetings with the neighbors to clarify some of the issues that they've brought up.
Can he tuck that microphone closer to him, please?
Oh, sure, sorry.
I think there are too many outstanding issues at this point in time to make a ruling on that for this afternoon, this evening. I would like to wait until the discussions, further discussions and clarifications that were brought up by the abutting landowners be met, discussed, and a solution identified.
Question for Chimbro. Does the timeline affect you dramatically if this were to be tabled tonight, pending these outstanding items that were discussed tonight?
Well, I think we can get resolution, you know, we can, I'm checking my notes here, but we talked about the deer wintering and the deer crossing and the slatting and so on that we would do, and the other one was the insurance.
The list that I have is the insurance liability issue of trees on top of the solar panels, the screenings for Pellerin 300 yards back, the cupola salvage, which is something would be a great idea, and thank you for coming up with that suggestion, to put that out front on a slab to be visible with a plaque or a sign for the Tupper family. I love that idea. The deer wintering yards, which are going to be reviewed by the DEP process, I understand, but the south side opening and possibly a vegetated buffer area, as well as the question about underground services to going to the east side, the well swap, the enhanced buffer zones with staggered trees possibly on the front so that one house doesn't look across the road at the fencing or the solar panels. So there's a lot of items that could be discussed, nothing that, a lot of these are not required within our ordinance, but we have some flexibility. But we want this to be fair to Chimbro as well as the neighbors, and that's our only intent.
Conditional for the acceptable outcome of our meetings.
So
I think we'd like to say conditional on the outcome of our meeting, and the insurance, that's going to be clear cut. The deer wintering, the cupola, the buffering that you know we can do around the property. I think where we have a concern is we agree to meet with each of the property owners that want to meet, if they want to meet, and we give you our word, we'll work that out to the best of our ability. But there could be no end to that, okay? And I think the chairman has already stated that, you know, we meet the conditions of the ordinance, and so I would like there to be some time frame on it that says, you know, if we don't come to agreement within the next 30 days or 60 days with the landowners on buffering or snow plowing or whatever, we don't want to see it turn into a never-ending disagreement so that we never get closure. That would not be fair. I think we've heard the word fairness here. I think those first 4 issues are easy. We've given good faith on that we'll meet, walk the sites depending on availabilities and say yes. You know, if it has to do with screening, if it has to do with trees, staggering, we can handle that. An issue like underground electrical, I think we take that off the table because we can't commit to that because we don't know what CMP is going to want, and it's also contingent on what the DEP will say. And yes, that will slow us down. And again, there has to be some closure. We worked hard to meet the ordinance. We worked hard to reach out to people that approached us. And I just want to give you one clarification or one example without you know, trying to be rude about it, to be just upfront. It's that when Mr. Ross called me back, we talked, I called him back again. I said, you're hitting me on a Friday afternoon before a Monday hearing, and I said, our folks are all out in the field. Some of them are there, so I garnered what I could. I just found out today that a significant portion, even though Mr. Ross thinks it was not, a significant portion of that 5 to 6 acres that he wants to offer in exchange for 15 to 16 acres on the front is wet and can't be built on. So that, you know, and I should have gone into more detail with him, but we were busy, he had a meeting to go to, and so that's why I told him that swap is a non-starter because we can't build there. So that's when we came up with the offer and the suggestion to provide land or an offer to purchase land at, very reasonable up in the northern, the western part of that western area, western parcel, because that's never going to get built on. And so I think that demonstrates we're trying to be accommodating, but I'll say it the third time, I don't want us to get into a never-ending request of, well, do we have to get the neighbors all to sign off on something? That's not in the ordinance. Where does that stop?
Can I suggest something? So I think we can accommodate everybody. I don't think I have no doubt that there's fairness on all sides here, and that's been exhibited by the speakers at the podium, planning board, and hopefully you hear it from ourselves as well. If we could paint a picture that we believe treats everybody well, because we do believe we did meet the ordinance, is that we got a conditional approval upon reasonable accommodation of the concerns that were put out tonight. So that way we're not held hostage to somebody who is ultimately dissatisfied that we didn't do everything they wanted. But by the same token, we know that we've got work to do to demonstrate to you, the planning board, that we have made reasonable accommodation for the concerns that have been brought up tonight, which we had every intent of doing. So that would be our request. We get a conditional approval with reasonable accommodation for the concerns brought up by the neighbors.
And your ultimate test for that, or holdback for that, is we still have to get a building permit. So.
Okay, well, several issues. We've been through this before. We've had solar abutters that went on forever. And we met and tried to accommodate these requests on a previous project. That neighbor continued to harass the solar farm, solar company, and I agree. To me, a timeline of 30 days to negotiate a reasonable, fair deal that's equitable to the neighbors, but also to you. And yes, you meet the ordinance. We cannot put restrictions on you. We cannot tell you what to do with your property. We cannot tell you to trade your property with the neighbors. But this is a sensitive situation. It's an old-time dairy farm. So I would ask and appreciate if you would meet with them in good faith on the reasonable accommodations that they're asking, and anything that's unreasonable, dollar-wise or cents-wise, is not required in our ordinance. So my suggestion would be a 30-day time limit. Come back to this board, modify that plan with these requests of buffer zones and answer the insurance questions. To me, if the plan is updated to accommodate the neighbors before approval is given, then it's very clear that they have good negotiating power for these minor items that they're asking for. The cupola to be set on a slab by the road, that's kind of a minor item. Okay, to the Tupper farm, that's a big item. Okay, we've seen these dairy farms deteriorate, and we've seen them go out of business. 4, 5, 6 generations farms go out of business. This is a very sensitive situation to that community there. I don't know these people personally, but I hear them personally, and I think you do as well. So I would suggest I would take a motion to either table this, or I'd take a motion to continue this with these conditions, but there's so many conditions here, it's going to be hard to delineate that with a conditional approval. This board has already approved the extension of 18 months, and that's the only thing in the ordinance that was required to give you the green light. But again, 30 days to iron it out with the neighbors and get them a little bit more content on what's happening up there. I think that 30 days would be well spent for these neighbors that are just trying to maintain their homes over there. I would take
We like that idea. We think that's very fair.
Okay, I take a motion.
moved.
I have a
Second.
motion second. Any discussion? I have a motion and a second to table this for 30 days, come back to us with a minorly revised plan. The plans are very good. There's a few questions that I have about what's delineating wooded buffer zones and fence lines. That could be cleaned up very minorly. But let's take a step back and get these people content with what's happening on that farm. and come back and get your project going, and wish you for a very successful project. Motion second. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
That's on the Monday, July 7th meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the citizens' comments, and we'll get to work.
Thank you.
And thank you for your considerations. Okay, next item on agenda. Thank you, Bill, for coming. Subdivision permit, revised application, sketch plan, discussion with developers representative, Fairfield Engineering, for a proposed 44 single home and 10 duplex lot subdivision, and preliminary discussion on a conditional use permit application for 10-acre commercial lot development off Norwich Walk Road on 171 acres on Assessors Map 2, Lot 9, in the Rural Residential Land Use District. Go.
Good evening. I'm Randy Butler. I'm with Dirigo Engineering, representing Bill Sanborn and DW LLC. I believe earlier last week you received a set of plans for the project. Since then, we've made a couple of revisions. We were working with MDOT to try to get confirmation of one of the entrance locations. That's been one of our struggles, is trying to get a location that meets site distance requirements, but also dodges wetlands and so forth. So if you'll permit me, I've got an updated plan here that is probably 75% the same as what you've got, but there are some changes that we've made. We've kind of relocated, swapped around the duplexes and the construction site. So I'll pass those out if you're agreeable to that. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Some help? Yes, sir. All right.
So that replaces this guy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to look at the differences.
Yeah, if you can, they should overlay if you want to. Most of the differences are going to be on the left-hand side down to...
You have one spare? Okay, thank you.
The differences are at 201.
Your entrance.
What I'll do is I'll take this large plan.
Right here.
Yep, come right up here.
I'll just stand here and hold it and try to point out some of the things to look at. One of the issues that we had is there are a lot more wetlands present than what we had anticipated originally.
We can't hear him very well from there.
Okay.
Sorry.
One of the issues that we have is much more wetlands than we had anticipated originally, especially right along Route 104. Originally, we'd planned on the construction site, Ranger Construction, having property kind of on the northerly portion of Route 10 of Norwich Walk Road. But it's got a significant amount of wetlands there, and challenging to find a place where we could get a road through there without having too much wetland impact. One of the things that we're trying to do is stay below 15,000 square feet of total wetland impact, because once you get above that level, then you have to start dealing with mitigation, compensation, the costs go up exponentially. So we're trying as much as possible to stay below 15,000 square feet. And the site where we had it located previously was at a narrow spot where there is a little bit of upland, so if you were to look at the old plans, but one of the problems is it's right directly across from a couple of homes. And maybe we could push through and maybe we could get it permitted, but I'm sure that it would not be the greatest thing, that we'd have some neighbors that would be somewhat upset with that. So we looked at an alternate site, was to pull that entrance further south by about 400 feet. And we finally got confirmation from MDOT, I think it was Monday. No, it was late last week, sorry. We finally got confirmation from them that that has adequate site distance. So what you see on the plan there is what I've labeled Road A, almost midway on that left-hand side. That is what we're doing as our proposed location. And the other thing that we decided to do, one of the things that Ranger is interested in, that Bill is interested in, is having access, kind of immediate access to a spot where he can get some trucks off the road, and one of his issues, he has to run his trucks basically empty back and forth between here and Madison area. So just trying to get a site where he can get off the road, get a few loads of material there perhaps to truck back and forth and save him some transportation fees, costs I should say. So by going with that southerly route, that gives him a place where he can get off the road without getting into wetlands immediately. Eventually, he will be crossing into wetlands, but at least perhaps for this summer, we can make the site somewhat usable for him. So as you look at the plan, one of the things, as we've talked about at our last meeting, 2 months ago perhaps, or more, your ordinance has a requirement that if you have more than, I believe it's 200 trips per day, then you have to have a second street connection. And in lieu of that, the board seemed to be agreeable, instead of having to have 2 separate street entrances onto Route 201, the board seemed to be agreeable to having one, essentially call it a split entrance. If you want to think of it being similar to First Parks, maybe not quite so robust as First Parks, but basically having an island and then 2 lanes on each side of that. So that if there is something for an accident that's blocking one lane, well, you've got the other side of the island that you can drive on. And then if you'll also note, as you look at that Road A, just in about 150 feet or so, you'll see we've got that road that goes up into the construction site. It's kind of in dashed lines there. And what our intent is, if the board is agreeable, is for that road to essentially become the emergency egress, the second lane if we ever need it. And that would be gated, but keys, it'd be a keypad gate mechanism, and first responders in the area would be given that key code. So if there's an accident in that first couple hundred feet, or that first stretch of road before you get to Road B, then we have a way to get around it. So that's kind of the intent of that bypass road. Yes, they'd be going through the construction site, but hopefully it's once in a 5-year event. The odds of an accident happening in that first few hundred feet is relatively low. We do have provision for it, so that's kind of what we're looking to accomplish there. I'll stop right there, I guess, and just let you ask any questions you may have regarding that before I move on.
So Randy, if I'm to understand, as you go through the entrance, the dotted lines is into this construction site that will be a road that would be an exit available for the project should Road A become blocked or something?
Correct, yes. That's exactly the intent behind that. Say for example, if that were where that label is, where it says Road A, just suppose there's an accident right there, okay? At that point, we've got just a standard 2-lane road at that point right there, 24 feet of pavement. So an accident could conceivably block that road. Well, all you've got to do is come up the road there, just past that intersection, and you've got that road that's going into the construction site, the lot that's labeled Lot 2, Ranger Construction. You've got that road that they can use as a bypass to get around that accident. So that's the goal that we're trying to accomplish there.
Any other changes, Randy, to that plan?
The other changes are, we've shifted the duplexes. Originally, we had those duplexes down there at that Ranger construction site. We've shifted those to the north. So if you look up at the upper left-hand corner, you'll see lot number 1, and that is labeled as 9 duplexes. And the number might change a little bit, but it'll be in that magnitude, plus or minus the 2 or 3 is what we're kind of shooting for. You might note that the road system indicated in the blue lines there, it kind of comes out where that 90-degree turn is between Road B and Road C, and my intent would be basically it's going to be a 4-way intersection. My thought would be to make that 4-way stop sign there, just to keep traffic going slow through the area. That's part of the intent. And then you'll also notice, if you look just north of those, up on the paper, basically this paper, the plan is oriented through north and so forth, you'll notice that the road to the right, on the right-hand side of that duplex lot, goes and actually feeds lots 13 and 14. So that's another, I guess what I would think would be an advantage of this layout. Some of the concern we had from Mr. Kissinger was construction site right against his property and providing adequate buffer and so forth. Well, with this scenario, it actually provides, now it's just standard house lots, minimum 80,000 square foot house lots against him, so it's I would think that would be much more agreeable for him. So that's probably the primary changes that we've got related to that. One of the questions that I guess that we've got to resolve, it's a little bit vague in the ordinance, is what might be required for buffers for both the construction site as well as the duplex site, if anything is required there. I guess we're thinking something along the lines of 25 feet on the construction site, but your ordinance doesn't give too much guidance. It kind of leaves it up to the board to decide what that should be.
So this is, I'm trying to remember the land use zone is rural residential.
Yes, it is, correct.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Go ahead.
Is this construction road going to be maintained all the time, or is it just while they're doing construction?
No, that would be maintained. That would be part of their yard, so yes, it would be maintained, and, you know, as they're bringing materials in and out and so forth, and there may be a lay-down yard for pipe materials, things of that nature that they might have out there. Again, it would be gated off at nighttime, and then...
Oh, it'd be gated off at nighttime?
Yes, but
Even
again...
when you're done?
Pardon me?
Even after you're done construction?
Yes. When we say construction site, it's actually owned by Ranger Construction.
Oh.
They currently have a lot out on Savage Street, but what they're looking to do is move that entire setup out to this site. To be
So
a
the
little bit
fire
more
department
central.
would have a key to that? In case
Correct.
it's an accident, they could go around?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How many acres, Randy, is that Lot 2?
Pardon me?
How many acres is Lot 2?
It's somewhere in the area of 14, 15 acres.
Okay.
Yep, his target was 10.
Yep.
And by the time we put a couple of wet ponds in there and so forth, it's probably just about what he'll have yet left for usable space there.
That construction road, are you going to have a cul-de-sac? How would a plow turn around?
Well, on the construction site, that will be all remaining private, so the town's not going to be required to plow that. So they'll do whatever they have to do to make things
I
happen.
was just saying, somebody going to Lot 3.
Right, well, Lot 3 is kind of reserved for Bill's son,
Okay.
and so they'll have the technology to keep that plowed out, and there'll be a deeded right-of-way across that property, across that road, so that road will be on the construction site, but provide access to Lot 3 in the back there. That's a nice piece of property down there, so the perks of being the owner's son is you get the pick of the crop.
And one other question, like Lot 3 and the recreation area, part of it's in Waterville.
Yes, that's correct. So we'll have to work, I've already contacted Ann Beveridge for the city, and essentially, because we're not really, it's very minor impact to them, they said, come to us when you've got the approval from Waterville, and they'll take a look at it, and hopefully it won't be anything for big surprises on them for that. But that's a good point. So, yes, the bottom portion of Lot 3 and the bottom portion of that common space / recreation area is in the city of Waterville.
So on the buffering and screening, it's in the land use ordinance. Looks like it starts on page 31, Article 7, Section 7.3. And it pretty much, talks about a 25-foot setback is required with a vegetated buffering screen dense enough to form an effective visual barrier. So you already have vegetation out there, if you just keep that in mind when you're timber harvesting, to keep a 25-foot strip.
Okay.
And that should meet that vegetated buffer strip between commercial and residential.
And Randy, because the town line is, some of this is in Waterville, some of it's in Fairfield, we may do like a preliminary approval pending your, or conditional on your approval with Waterville, because
Okay.
who knows what Waterville may request for buffer zones. We don't want to be competing against that. We want to
Okay.
work with Waterville.
Right, yeah. I guess my thought would be if you can do it as conditional, and
Absolutely.
if they approve, great,
Absolutely.
that makes sense to me. Yep.
And we don't have any idea whether they have the same zoning there as we have in Fairfield.
That's up to Ann Beveridge.
Yep. Yeah, I would assume that they've got similar zoning there, because there are a number, there's a small subdivision, well, you see the number of homes that they've got down through there, so essentially where the portion that is in Waterville is just a residential home, so I wouldn't expect it to be any issue. I could see it being an issue if it was part of the construction site, that might be a concern, but where we're just matching commercial, residential next to residential.
Down the road a ways, I think it was Roy, the real estate agent.
Mhm.
He wanted to keep a hospice, you couldn't keep one in Waterville.
Oh,
He had a lot that was in Fairfield.
okay.
He had to build a barn over there.
Okay, yeah. And that's one of the things that we've talked about a little bit, is what he might have on here for deed restrictions and so forth, and one of them, we know for sure, will be restricting no mobile homes, will be a restriction. We haven't really got anything else pegged down for sure, but that's one thing we know at this point.
How about modular homes?
I think, I guess my thought would be, we haven't talked about that.
Okay.
Modular homes, if done right, are done, they look like anything
Not
else.
right.
It's the
Unless
mobile,
they-
it's the mobile homes or the mobile homes and double wides.
Okay.
I think would be what you'd want to restrict.
Good question.
That's off the record, Bill.
Yeah.
No, and to build, a lot of us have, we allow sectional homes in because you can't tell the difference.
Right.
Sectional homes have
Right.
pitch roofs.
Right.
They don't look like double wides.
Right.
Go on
So-
full
Yep.
foundation.
And one of the, we've looked through a couple of different deed restrictions, and one of them states a minimum of a 512 roof pitch, for example. So that gets you out of that realm of the standard double wides and so forth. So I think those are some of the things that we'll be trying to get ironed out here for the next meeting. Because he wants it to be a nicer, it's not, it'll be a nice facility is what he's looking to market here. And we're hoping that with having the pond there, some hiking trails around it, that will be an appeal, especially younger families. Nicole, is there anything for a restriction that we need to look at as far as buffers for the duplex lot? Is that, I didn't really see anything in there.
Well-
Spelled out very clearly.
Right, because again, that's residential, and it's against residential.
Right.
So, the only time they call for extra buffering in the land use ordinance is when residential meets commercial use.
Okay.
So, again, that's under section 7.3. And I didn't see any restriction residential against residential.
Okay.
Let me just see if it talks about multifamily, though.
And while you're looking that up,
Yeah.
one of the things that we'll have to do is go through DEP, because we'll have more than 3 acres of impervious area, as well as more than 15 lots. So we've just started kicking the ball to DEP, haven't got a date yet, but we'll have to do a pre-application meeting with them. So it's going to be a several-month-long process to be working with them. So we're kind of going to be riding both of these horses, if you will, at the same time, with between Planning Board and DEP, trying to keep on a parallel course with, hopefully at the end of the day, the stars will all align and we can all come to agreement on one plan with everybody.
So, yeah, under 2, screening of commercial and multifamily development, so it does talk about multifamily development. 1 and 2 family is considered residential, but where you have them clustered on one lot, that would be, more than 2. So
Right.
you would go to screening of multifamily, and again, a visual screening. And if you can't achieve a natural vegetation, you can do it by fencing between the abutting property. the
Okay.
single family.
It doesn't give a set distance, though.
It does not give us that
Okay.
distance, it just says the buffering shall be sufficient to minimize the impacts of, the buildings.
Okay.
And that could be natural or planted buffers there, Randy, as well.
Okay.
Right.
Not that Bill's got anything to hide.
No. Oh, he's hoping it's an A1 facility here, so. One of the questions I would have is, he would like to have the office, the construction site somewhat visible from the road, doesn't need to see the entire site. Is that buffer required against the road? At least like to have something for a sign there,
Right.
and at least some visibility of the office, just for a little marketing purposes and so forth. So I assume that there's...
Well, it's vacant land across the street,
Yeah,
so-
exactly, right. So I guess our thought was, I don't know that he wants to clear the entire strip there, but at least enough so that there's decent visibility of his business.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments from the board? Questions for Randy?
Nice job.
Yeah,
Lot of
good plans.
detail.
I like the revised. Very nice.
Appreciate that. And we'll have, so next time we come, I'm not sure that we'll be ready for your next meeting. That's July 7th, I think I
Yes.
heard, yeah. So
Yep.
that's probably a little aggressive for us. We've got soil test pits to take care of, a few other steps that we'll have to take care of, so I expect it'll be, is it once every two, how often, or are you kind of,
They meet the first Monday of the month typically.
okay, all right.
So as long as you give us the applications 2 weeks before,
Okay.
then we can do notice to abutters and do the legal ad.
Okay.
That takes a little while.
Right. And at what point will you do a public hearing? Will that be after the next meeting? Or
That would
will it be during that meeting?
During that meeting,
Okay.
correct. So we would open up with the public hearing, let the public speak. Well, you would introduce the project, then they
Sure.
would ask their questions.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that.
All right,
Good
you're
work.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming. Next item on our agenda, last item, C, conditional land use permit pre-application sketch plan discussion with Kevin Corbett, Rewild Renewables, for a proposed 4.9 megawatt solar farm at 176 Norwich Walk Road on Assessors Map 5, Lot 82, in the Rural Residential Land Use District. Do we have...
Kevin?
I am here via Zoom. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
All right.
Welcome.
Well, I will certainly try and make this quick. I'm sure you guys are sick of talking about solar, and the Bruins are on end of the first period, so we'll try and make this brief. But yeah, this is, thanks for setting this up, Nicole. So we're just doing a pre-app meeting just to generally talk about the project. We're still in really early phase here for our project. We're currently just working through the whole CMP process. So just wanted to come start talking about the project, and we'll probably, I'm thinking, submit an actual application in probably a few months. And at that time, I'll be accompanied by an engineering firm who helps with the permitting and does all the environmental stuff. But I just wanted to just get in front of you guys and talk generally about the project. So, yeah, Rewild Renewables is the company that I work for. We've done over 50 megawatts of projects in Maine that are either completed construction or under construction in the last couple of years. And we have another 50 megawatts in development, including this one in Fairfield. So my name's Kevin Corbett, so I actually am the vice president of construction, but I also do some development. We're a smaller operation, but we do all of our projects local, whether our main office is located in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We have an office in Yarmouth, Maine. And so most of our work is in New England. We have a couple projects in California, but that's sort of one-off there. So we've done a lot of work, hundreds of megawatts over the past few years, primarily in New England. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the company. The project that we're proposing, we have a option to lease with the Larrabees over on 176 Norwich Walk Road, which is essentially right on the corner of Norwich Walk and Ohio Road, the farm there. So our project is, and do you guys have a plan of just a general sketch of the project that you want to present it, or?
We have your aerial photo layout that we can see here in the corner.
Yeah, so it's preliminary. We actually we had preliminary wetlands done in the late fall, but it was too late to actually get a delineation. So our wetland scientist, since he was busy with vernal pool surveys and everything else in the spring, he just went out there last week and did an actual delineation. So I'm waiting for the results from him, but I think we pretty much know what's going on out there. That's where you see sort of the, the breakup of the proposed array, where, avoiding all the wetlands. There's an intermittent stream sort of on the eastern side in the middle of the fields here that we need to stay 75 feet away from. So we'll obviously be going through the DEP process alongside this. We're looking to basically have no wetland impact. So I think we're just going to do a stormwater PBR process, but we'll see once we get that delineation done and we get an actual survey done, we'll sort of fine tune our layout and our plan set, and then come to the board with an actual application and a much more developed set of plans. So just a little bit about the project. I met with Larissa and Anthony a while back last year, and we talked about the opportunity to lease some of their parcel here. We tried to really focus on the areas that they're not utilizing. There's a lot of areas to the east and the north that they still hay and they still utilize, but essentially the entire area that we're occupying is really not of any value or any use to them right now. So we tried to primarily keep it on that land. One of the things that we've done proactively already is we've had meetings with the Maine Audubon Society and our landscape architect, where our company is really trying to make sure that the projects that we develop have diversity with plant and wildlife capabilities. So we've been working with Maine Audubon on this project and others, and a landscape architect on trying to bring in more diverse plants and things like that, and wildflower mix. That I think our architect's actually doing a site walk out here pretty soon to kind of take a look at what the grounds look like and try and bring in more wildlife plants and flowers and things like that to help with the birds and the bees. So that's one thing that we try and do on all of our projects, is just try and really create a better habitat than what's currently out there. But it's currently, obviously, I'm sure you've driven by here. It's hay fields and sort of fields that are not utilized for much of anything, and obviously the farm that's there. So I think the difference between this project and the Chinborough project before is obviously this one's much smaller. We're just under 5 megawatts AC, where the current path is for it to be in the net energy billing community solar program. So we'd be basically getting residential primarily and small commercial off takers. So the power would be similar to that project, where it just feeds directly back into the grid, but we're responsible for providing the off takers for the project, for the power, in order to qualify for that program. So
Do you have that person already lined up, or no? For the center?
No, so it's like ongoing. We have, like I said, we have 53 megawatts that are constructed. We're having, we just had a project in Gardner that was turned online. And that one, we have all the offtake. We actually have a witness test with CMP tomorrow for a project in Baldwin, and we have another one on Friday for a project in Belfast. So we have all the off-takers lined up for those, but the off-takers sort of come later on. Mainly we try and get them right prior to starting construction, but it's a prerequisite for the program that we have to have 100% subscription for the off-takers before we can actually schedule a witness test and energize the project with CMP. So it sort of will come later on. This project, similar to the other one, is in I-39 transmission study, which is not expected to come out until sometime next year. So I think, we're probably, we'll probably come to the board at some point over the next few months, but probably similar to Chinborough has asked for some sort of waiver on the 6-month timeline, just because we probably won't be starting construction until the latter half of next year, assuming everything goes well.
What's your total acres of panels?
Sorry, what's that?
Total acres of panels?
Yeah, so we're under 20 acres. It's like 19 or so, so we're not going through the site location of development permitting process. So yeah, the total developed area on this project is going to be under 20 acres.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Go.
Any chance this might get closer to 5.1 megawatts as opposed to 4.9?
Sorry, what's that?
I says, any chance that this project gets a little closer to 5.1 megawatts versus the 4.9 currently proposed?
No, so it has to be under 5 megawatts in order to get into the program that we're doing. So no, it would be under 5 megawatts.
Anything else? Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. Everything looks like you're in order, and we look forward to seeing you later in the season.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kevin.
thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you guys, and yeah, we'll probably see you in a few months.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye.
Next item on the agenda, unfinished business. And keep in mind that we've ruined my record of a quick planning board meeting.
Those days are done.
Huh?
You made up the last one, didn't you?
Ruined it. But go ahead. Next item, unfinished business, items by the public, clerk, or members.
I'm done.
The Bruins.
No, I'd like to have one.
Did they play? They playing tonight? Yeah. Okay.
I have one question. You know, as we sit here listening to all these solar panel projects coming in, and all the questions that come that are recurring, should we not approach the council and ask if we should revisit the ordinances around the solar panel, solar farms, specifically the buffers and the chain link fences? 'Cause
Well, and that's a good point, but however, some solar farms that are gonna come to Fairfield later, they're in the middle of the woods. They're like, quarter of a mile from a road. So there
I
are
agree.
examples where solar farms are gonna be proposed in the middle of the woods that nobody can see. So if we were to increase the setbacks and buffer zones, in some applications, nobody can see it.
Well, I understand that, Kevin, but the ones that can be seen, I really do think, because, I mean, when you go by them on 201, and you see these long lines of solar panels and a chain link fence, that's no buffer. I mean, people see it. If that's what we want to become, that's fine. And I don't disagree with you with regards to some of these farmlands, so there may be more of them that are going to be visible. And I think we should at least have a conversation about what should it be, and
Well, the tough one, which is what the ones we just went through, is we don't have a dog in that fight, but the Tupper kid sold the farm, and the rest of the Tupper family is upset with him. So therefore, because the Tupper family's upset with one of the Tupper boys, they're basically asking the Chimbrow company to possibly spend hundreds of thousands of dollars removing poles and doing things that aren't required in our ordinance. So
I
we
understand.
have to ask ourselves, are we going to be like somewhat neutral and pro ordinance? Or do we, and the point's well taken, or do we go back for an ordinance change that adds a lot of restrictions to make these things unseen and require taller fences and more trees?
I'm just
So-
saying, from my perspective, just a common sense restriction. You know, something that, because do we want to drive by and see them? To be quite honest with you. The deer yards and those things that are getting disrupted, all over the place, that aren't being really,
Well, the deer farm thing is a good one, and there's quite a few deer over there, I understand. But I've been through one of those studies with DEP. They're looking for the spotted salamanders. They're looking for where the deer winter, when they travel. They may take Chimbrow's plan and change it dramatically for the deer yards. But that's a review by DEP and those professionals, not only Army Corps, but also, you get involved with these deer yards, and, all the agencies in the state look at that. So that's a separate review process. I don't think we need to strengthen the deer yard restrictions or setups. That's a DEP process. But the visible thing, that's where our latitude is, and you are right. Should we be doing more?
At this stage, this is heavily subsidized stuff.
This guy is, the Chimbro isn't.
Right, but most of them are.
No. Most of them are selling to the highest paid guy.
Well, that's the other part. He was getting a little bit upset when she asked about where's the power going.
Oh, and
They don't know yet.
they
because-
don't know.
It's not for us.
And furthermore.
Well, it isn't. But I don't know. That's just me, because I just don't like to see, and it's not, I don't know anything about that family.
Right.
I don't know.
And that's good because you have an insight of, you don't know the family.
I don't know the family, and a lot of the stuff they were saying really had no bearing on this. However, if Maine wants to become this, where we are solar farms, and you're right, the power, we have no say where it goes. However, it just kind of rubs folks the wrong way.
Yeah, well, another thing we gotta watch too is they're private owners. I mean,
That's right.
You want us to tell what you can do with your land?
Well, no, I don't. However, I don't want my property to be, just, if I put solar panels on my property, I'm gonna leave. I'm gone.
But
You're-
that's
you're-
fine.
But you're
You have
across
a
the
right to
road.
do that.
You're across the road. Do you want to see it?
I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's my personal opinion.
But listen, it's a valid discussion and it's a valid point, and it's only valid when the poor gal's sitting there watching her farm leave.
Yeah, but she should have bought it before.
Listen, every time we go through this, the land was for sale, you should have bought it when you saw it at Martin's.
Now,
Isn't
one
that
thing I
the same?
don't like is the lawsuit, if a tree on my land falls under their solar panel, I shouldn't get sued, or my insurance shouldn't get sued.
And
That's not right.
And that's gonna take a little bit of.
That would how a
review.
town could avoid anything like that.
Well, no, I mean, in your standard homeowner's policy, you have like a $500,000 rider for a budding.
Right.
Now, one tree, is it gonna take out a $500,000 panels? No. But,
No, we've
could
got
this,
10,000 trees on that land.
well,
I don't know, 10,000, the whole mile.
the whole line, that's correct. And unfortunately, the identical thing happened to me 6 months ago. There goes Souls over in Winslow. I got 50 acres. They built a half a mile of roads through my 50 acres to get to their solar farm. And I said, hey guys, look at those trees leaning over the line. They're on my line. They're leaning over. You're putting silt fence, there's solar panels. Don't you want to cut those trees down? Well, we hadn't thought about it. I said, well, just a suggestion. The hazard trees and the trees leaning, you have my permission to take them. We'll split the salvage if you want. They're not going to do a thing. So guess what?
You
My
could get-
tree falls on their solar farm. When I ask them if they'd like to remove hazard trees, guess what? We'll show up with the law office of you'll be and sorry, okay? Because I asked you and you didn't want to take the hazard trees down. So we can't outguess what could happen with hazard trees in the line, and that's up for a discussion between insurance companies, because his insurance company and their insurance company, they'll cut a deal and you won't even know, and your
Yeah.
rates won't go up. So that, we can't fight that battle, but Greg's point's well taken. Do we want, as a board, to make a recommendation to the council to change our ordinance in the area of visibility screens, for example? And we go through this every time there's a cell tower proposed. Not in my neighborhood, you're not putting a cell tower, it's 90 feet tall. Well, do you use cell phones? Well, yes, I do. Well, can you buffer zone a 90-foot cell tower? Not really. So
You can't buffer a solar panel field either.
in the cases where the project we just looked at, which is in Fairfield Center, coming down the hill in Fairfield and Upper Main Street, coming down into Fairfield Center, Western Avenue comes at the bottom. Guess what you're gonna see sitting
Solar
right
panels.
there?
How you gonna block that? You can't.
And guess what's coming? 2,000 acres more of solar panels on the same field over at Toges.
Yeah.
So can we stop it? We own the land. Can we restrict it? Can we? Yes. As a board.
Do you
can
want
make
to
a-
lose the business?
We could
Lose
make,
that.
that's the point. We could make a recommendation to the council that we do a moratorium on solar farms until we can determine what buffer zones are adequate. But in this hilly country, you're gonna see those solar panels no matter what.
Especially from your bathroom.
Especially from your bathroom.
Well, we could come back with it next time. You know what I mean? Like, wait for this application to go through, and then maybe towards the end of summer, bring that section of the ordinance in, and just review those 10 criteria specific to solar, and see if what the planning board gives for input that they want to see more restrictions of. Then we'll put that draft to the town council.
Good.
But not try to conflict with what's already in process and make people confused as to what the standards are, because they've already applied, so they're being reviewed under the current standards.
Everybody that's applied is probably grandfathered under our ordinance. Now, in sensitive areas, Greg's point's well taken, a very
Right.
sensitive area where, you know, this thing is happening and it's like everybody can see it. I mean, all the houses are looking at it.
Right.
You know, at some point, do you say no, or say you don't meet the ordinance, or restrict a solar farm, or say no to a solar farm? You absolutely would have the authority under a changed ordinance to do that, but I'll give you a little hint. There's huge money involved, and there's
Yeah, what are the
huge
taxes?
revenue.
When are we gonna see the benefit on our taxes?
When?
Yeah.
When they go online, when they're built. We have
Okay,
one on the
once-
landfill that's not built, we have one behind Derigo Engineering that's not complete. I mean, you have a lot of incomplete projects.
Now, however, April 1st, you can tax the ones even if they're not online. So it's April 1st, you tax the solar farms. Now, there's $30 million worth of panels on this Chimbro project. What's the tax bill to Chimbro on those panels? Do we know?
I'm not an assessor.
Just for the heck of it, when our assessor's in, give us some numbers so that we can understand
It'd be nice to have.
the value. And these people represented themselves very well tonight. And one of them works at the school. How is this going to affect the school? You know, our programs are getting cut. Is this revenue that's coming to help the town and help the schools? Well, the answer to that question is yes. And again, I don't know the numbers exactly, but I will say 30 million bucks is probably equal to 1,000 homes. We won't live long enough to see 1,000 new homes in Fairfield, and then the kids will be over 1,000 kids in our schools. And so the residential development burdens a town, whereas this type of development has no burden to the town, only tax revenue. Will it change your mill rate? $30 million of taxable income? How about if we
hope
have-
so.
What if we have 10 more, okay? And we're talking about $500 million worth of tax rate. You'll see your mill rate go down, because guess what happened when S.D. Warren showed up in Skowhegan? Mill rate went down, okay? With no burden to Skowhegan.
Can
So-
we add one more thing to that ordinance revision? How about we keep changing that 90-day retention
Please.
onto the marijuana? So we'll look at what we need for solar revisions and maybe deal with that marijuana revision of that, make it equal to the state, 45 days?
And then are you referring to the 6-month time period that everybody's asking?
Everybody asks for an extension of that.
Fix it.
So-
Fix it.
So
There's
why don't
no-
we take up all those issues later?
No, that's right. Greg's
Okay.
right. Put that in a
6 month.
recommended ordinance change.
All
Keep
right.
in mind that ISO and all the application process, they take up to 18 months to answer their
Correct.
questions. How can we approve something in 6 months if they're taking 18 months to get their approvals? So that needs to be changed in the ordinance, you're absolutely right. Why do we have to ask for a waiver every time? We need to make some suggestions to the council to change the ordinance. And again, let's keep in mind Greg's suggestion here about what do we do differently, okay?
Buffering.
On buffering, maybe to still allow solar, but show some respect to the abutting landowners. And again, we don't have a dog in that fight. We didn't
Right.
sell that farm, we didn't buy that farm, we didn't break that farm up, and
But it's a delicate balance between, you're right, and you're right, people can do what they want with their property. However, when something like this comes in, if you're in a butter and it has an impact on your property value, can we minimize it as much as we can?
Well, we don't know what it does to the
Okay,
value.
Well,
okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to live across from a solar farm.
Okay, but listen, keep in mind this. They asked the question, and it was a good question. Does that affect my property value? Okay? Now, there's two ways to appraise property. One of them is comparable sales. okay? The other one is income stream. So if we look at it as a commercial property, and next door to my house is a commercial property that has $30 million worth of solar panels, and the income stream off that property supports property value 10 times more than what it currently was. Their property value didn't go down. It can't. Next door, property value went up tenfold. So your property values don't necessarily go down if you're next to an income property.
If it goes up, your taxes will go up.
But the other side to that is if this property's generating revenue, your mill rate and your taxes should go down. Your property values don't go down. They really don't go down, okay? You know, here in Fairfield with the chemical problems we're having, property values haven't gone down yet, have they?
Increasing.
There you go. So what the heck? Does that make sense to you today? But
I'm
again,
done with it. I'm okay, because
No, but
my
Greg-
biggest thing is I lived near a landfill in Virginia, and they were supposed to close it. They expanded it. And it was like, oh no, you knew it was here. Well, it was supposed to be closed.
they got the
Now, they got
permits.
water, they got a lot of things out there, but it did affect the family, the value, the sale price of the house.
Absolutely.
So,
Because no one wants to
that's
move.
where my thing is, and you're absolutely correct on all of it, but
So the concern is just kind of buffer zones at this time?
in public, ones that are on the public roads especially, I mean, but, hey,
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no.
Well, we'll look at the
Listen,
whole ordinance.
when you have a good idea like that or a suggestion,
It's-
question,
well, it doesn't sound
don't
like it
lose
is.
it. Keep it so that we can implement that to make more of these people more content. We're not going to drive the solar farms out of here, but we may enhance buffer zones to make it more palatable. That makes sense to me. And just the fact that we didn't approve this tonight, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank Nicole for all the work she's done the past year and a half, delivering up material to keep us informed, and especially
Absolutely.
with this pandemic.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
She did a very good job.
Absolutely. No question. Do a great job for us.
Well, thank you. I'm
I just
glad.
want to say that if I was a voting member tonight, I'd vote to adjourn.
Okay.
All those in favor to adjourn?
Oh,
Thank you.
Good one, Jeff.
Okay, got the
I
point.
remember, I was working with.
Thank you very much for coming in.
No problem.